At our annual family reunion, Father's Day dinner surrounded by 30 relatives at Golden Oak Country Club, Dad stands up during his traditional toast. "I'm proud of all my children," he announces, scanning the table with a broad smile, "except the loser sitting right here." His eyes lock on me. Everyone erupts in cruel laughter. My successful siblings, Doctor Brother Marcus, lawyer, Sister Diana, and engineer Brother Tyler, smirk knowingly. 20 years of feeling invisible culminate in this public humiliation. I grip the secret envelope in my purse, my heart shattering completely. The laughter still echoes in my ears as I sit frozen in my chair, the weight of 32 years crashing down on me like a tidal wave. This moment feels inevitable, yet I never imagined it would happen so publicly, so cruelly in front of every person who matters in our family circle. Growing up as the middle child in the Richardson household meant being caught between expectations I could never meet and dreams nobody understood. While Marcus excelled in pre-med courses and Diana conquered debate tournaments, I spent afternoons in the dark room developing photographs that captured moments others missed entirely. Dad would walk past my makeshift studio in the basement without a second glance, but he could recite Marcus's GPA to anyone who'd listen. I remember my high school photography exhibition at Westfield Arts Center. 3 months of preparation culminated in 24 carefully curated pieces displayed under professional lighting. Mrs. Henderson, my photography teacher, called it exceptional work for someone my age. Local newspaper critics praised my unique perspective on everyday life in suburban Connecticut. But Dad never showed up. He was at Tyler's soccer practice instead, cheering from the sidelines while my artistic soul withered in an empty gallery. College brought fresh hope when I enrolled at Rochester Institute of Technology for their renowned photography program. Dad's reaction still stings like an open wound. "Playing with cameras," he called it, rolling his eyes at the dinner table. "When are you going to get serious about your future, Chelsea?" Meanwhile, he bragged to neighbors about Marcus's acceptance into Johns Hopkins Medical School and Diana's full scholarship to Yale Law. The irony burns deeper than anyone realizes. My playing with cameras has become something extraordinary, something that would shock every person at this dinner table if they knew the truth. 5 years ago, I started Richardson Photography as a small wedding business, working weekends while maintaining a day job at a local studio. Word spread quickly about my ability to capture authentic emotions during life's most precious moments. Brides began requesting me specifically after seeing my portfolio online. My signature style of intimate, candid shots, combined with perfectly composed formal portraits, created a waiting list that stretched months ahead. What started as weekend work became so successful that I quit my day job and opened my first studio in downtown Hartford. The real secret, the one that makes Dad's words tonight even more devastating, is that my business explodes beyond my wildest expectations. Richardson Photography Studios now operates in Hartford, Springfield, and Boston, with a team of 12 photographers working under my direction. My online masterclass, Capturing Love Wedding Photography for Professionals, enrolls over 2,000 students globally and generates 6-figure revenue annually. But the deepest secret of all, the one that makes this family gathering feel like a twisted joke, is how I've been supporting everyone sitting at this very table. For the past 4 years, I've anonymously covered Dad's mounting medical bills from his diabetes and heart condition. The quarterly payments to Golden Oak Country Club for his membership come directly from my business account. When the family takes annual vacations to Martha's Vineyard, I'm the silent financier, ensuring everyone can participate without financial stress. I've watched Dad beam with pride as he tells Uncle Robert about providing for his family, never knowing that his daughter, the supposed disappointment, makes more money in a month than Marcus will earn in his entire residency year. The luxury BMW sitting in the country club parking lot, the one Dad shows off to anyone who will admire it, carries payments that come from my checking account every month. My assistant Sarah has begged me repeatedly to reveal the truth. Chelsea, you're killing yourself emotionally to support people who treat you like garbage, she argues during our weekly planning meetings. Your father takes credit for success. You're literally funding while calling you a failure. This isn't family loyalty, it's financial and emotional abuse. But every time I consider speaking up, I imagine the chaos it would create. Mom would be mortified. The siblings would feel humiliated. Dad's pride would crumble entirely. So I stay silent, letting them believe their own version of reality while I finance the illusion from behind the curtain. The BMW keys feel heavy in my purse next to the envelope I've carried here tonight. 6 months ago, I surprised Dad with that car for his 62nd birthday. The family pooled together supposedly, though. I covered the $48,000 purchase entirely. Watching his face light up as he ran his hands over the leather interior almost made the deception worthwhile. Almost. Now, sitting here as his words echo through the dining room, I realize the cost of my silence has become unbearable. Every anonymous payment, every hidden success, every swallowed truth has led to this moment of public humiliation. I've enabled his dismissal of me by refusing to let him face the reality of our family's financial situation. The envelope in my purse contains documents that will change everything. Legal papers that prove ownership of assets Dad believes belong to him. Bank statements showing account balances that dwarf his wildest imagination. Evidence of a business empire built while he convinced everyone I was wandering through life without direction or purpose. Tonight, the charade ends. The question isn't whether I'll reveal the truth, but whether our family relationships can survive the earthquake that's about to reshape everything they think they know about success, pride, and the daughter they've consistently underestimated. The weight of maintaining this elaborate facade has consumed more energy than building my actual business empire. As Dad continues his toast, oblivious to the bombshell sitting in my purse, I think about the phone call I had with my accountant just this morning. Jennifer was reviewing the quarterly reports for all 3 Richardson photography locations, and the numbers still amaze even me. Hartford studio alone generated $437,000 in revenue last quarter, with bookings scheduled 18 months in advance. Brides drive from as far as Maine and North Carolina specifically for Richardson photography services. Our signature package, which includes engagement photos, bridal portraits, full wedding coverage, and a custom album, commands $8,500 per event, and we're booked solid through next year. The Springfield location, which opened just 14 months ago, has already exceeded projected first-year earnings by 63%. The Boston studio represents my biggest risk and greatest triumph. Located in the prestigious Back Bay neighborhood, it caters to high-profile clientele, including politicians, professional athletes, and entertainment industry figures. Last month alone, we photographed a senator's daughter's wedding and a Red Sox player's engagement party. But the studios represent only part of my business landscape. My online course, Capturing Love Professional Wedding Photography Mastery, has enrolled photographers from 47 states and 12 countries. The comprehensive curriculum covers technical skills, client management, business development, and artistic vision. At $497 per enrollment, with new sessions launching monthly, it generates consistent passive income that supplements the studio earnings beautifully. Real estate investments have become my newest passion and profit center. Using photography income as down payments, I've purchased 4 rental properties in up-and-coming neighborhoods throughout Connecticut and Massachusetts. The monthly rental income covers mortgage payments while building long-term equity. Property values in these areas have appreciated by an average of 12% annually, creating wealth that will sustain me for decades. Sarah handles the administrative complexity of managing multiple income streams with remarkable efficiency. She coordinates between studio managers, tracks, online course enrollment monitors, rental property maintenance, and manages my investment portfolio. Without her organizational skills, maintaining this level of business success while keeping it hidden from my family would be impossible. The exhaustion of living this double life has taken its toll in ways I'm only beginning to understand. Every family gathering requires careful preparation to avoid accidentally revealing information about my real circumstances. I drive my older Honda Civic to family events while keeping my new Porsche Cayenne parked at the office. My wardrobe for family occasions consists of discount store purchases, while my professional wardrobe includes designer pieces appropriate for high-end client meetings. The psychological strain of watching Dad accept credit for financial stability I provide has pushed me to therapy twice a week with Dr. Martinez. She helps me understand how childhood emotional neglect created patterns of seeking approval through self-sacrifice. Our sessions focus on recognizing manipulation tactics and developing healthy boundaries with family members who take advantage of my generous nature. The BMW situation represents everything wrong with these family dynamics in perfect microcosm. 6 months ago, Dad mentioned wanting to upgrade his aging Ford pickup truck. Instead of suggesting he save money or explore financing options, I researched luxury vehicles and selected the BMW X5 as a surprise gift. I handled the entire purchase process, from negotiating with the dealer to arranging financing, then presented it as a collective gift from all 4 siblings. Marcus contributed $50, Diana provided $25, Tyler managed $37. I covered the remaining $47,888 without telling anyone the real breakdown. Dad spent weeks bragging to neighbors about his successful children who loved him enough to buy such an extravagant present. The irony of him using my gift to demonstrate his children's respect while simultaneously calling me a loser in front of extended family feels like a knife twisting in an old wound. Uncle Robert listens to Dad's ongoing toast about family success, with admiring nods, completely unaware that the niece he's dismissing has achieved more financial independence than every other person in this room combined. Cousin Janet works as a bank manager and would be shocked to see my business account balances. Cousin David owns a small plumbing company that generates roughly 1/10 of my annual revenue. The envelope in my purse contains more than just business documents. It holds copies of every anonymous payment I've made to support this family's lifestyle over the past 4 years. The country club membership Dad treasures costs $3,200 annually paid through automatic withdrawal from my Hartford studio account. His diabetes medication and heart specialist appointments, which insurance doesn't fully cover, add up to nearly $800 monthly in out-of-pocket expenses I handle quietly. But the medical bills represent only the beginning of my hidden family support. Marcus's student loan payments, which he can't manage on his residency salary, receive quarterly assistance, totaling $12,000 annually. Diana's struggling law practice has avoided bankruptcy only because I've covered her office rent and malpractice insurance for the past 18 months. Tyler's mortgage company stopped foreclosure proceedings last year when mysterious payments suddenly brought his account current. None of them know. They believe their financial struggles resolved through their own efforts or Dad's guidance and support. The truth? That their supposedly unsuccessful sister has been their financial safety net, would shatter their entire understanding of family hierarchy and personal achievement. Tonight, as Dad's words echo through this dining room, filled with relatives who've written me off as the family disappointment, I finally understand that protecting their feelings has meant sacrificing my own dignity for far too long. The successful daughter they refuse to see has been supporting the family patriarch who just called her a loser in front of 30 people. The keys to the BMW feel cold in my hand as I prepare to reclaim not just a car but my self-respect and the truth about who really built this family's financial foundation. As Dad finally concludes his poisonous toast and settles back into his chair with satisfied smugness, conversations resume around the table, but I notice something that makes my blood run cold. Uncle Robert leans toward Dad with a conspiratorial whisper, and I catch fragments that reveal a betrayal far deeper than tonight's public humiliation. Yes, still think you're right about Chelsea's situation? Uncle Robert murmurs, glancing in my direction. Unstable is putting it kindly. Good thing you warned me before I made the mistake of recommending her to the Hendersons for their daughter's wedding. My fork freezes halfway to my mouth as the conversation becomes clearer. Dad nods gravely, playing the role of concerned father protecting unsuspecting clients from his unreliable daughter. It breaks my heart, he says with practiced sorrow, but I can't let innocent people suffer because of her problems. The girl can barely take care of herself, let alone handle important events. The blood drains from my face as I realize the scope of Dad's sabotage. The Henderson wedding would have been a $15,000 contract, a high-profile event that could have opened doors to other wealthy families in their social circle. Uncle Robert, who serves on the country club's event planning committee, has been in the perfect position to refer potential clients to my business. Instead, Dad has been systematically destroying those opportunities before I even knew they existed. What about the Morrison anniversary party? Aunt Linda asks quietly. I thought Chelsea might be perfect for that kind of intimate celebration. Dad shakes his head sadly, the picture of paternal disappointment. I had to tell them she's not available for bookings right now. She's going through some personal issues that affect her reliability. I suggested they use Patterson Photography instead. Much more professional outfit. Patterson Photography, my biggest local competitor owned by someone who charges 30% less and delivers mediocre results. I've lost countless potential clients without ever knowing they were interested. My own father has been actively destroying my business reputation while I've been funding his lifestyle. The revelation gets worse as I listen to Aunt Carol join the conversation. I'm so sorry you're dealing with this, she says sympathetically. I had no idea Chelsea was struggling so much. I mentioned her to my neighbor whose son is getting married. But after what you told me about her financial irresponsibility, I steered them toward a different photographer. Financial irresponsibility, the words hit like physical blows. While I've been secretly paying for Dad's medical care country club membership and luxury car, he's been spreading lies about my money management skills to anyone who might hire me. The systematic nature of his sabotage becomes clear. He's not just dismissive or neglectful, he's actively malicious. My mind races back to other missed opportunities that suddenly make sense. The corporate event I never heard about, that went to a competitor. The society wedding that should have been referred to me through family connections. The anniversary celebration that would have led to multiple bookings within that social circle. Dad has been intercepting these opportunities and redirecting them away from me for months, possibly years. Yay, she's living off charity from her siblings, I hear him whisper to Cousin David. Marcus and Diana help her with rent sometimes, but they're getting tired of supporting someone who won't grow up and take responsibility. The irony is so twisted it takes my breath away. He's telling people I live off my siblings' charity when the exact opposite is true. Marcus couldn't afford his apartment without my quarterly assistance. Diana would be homeless without my covering her rent. Tyler's mortgage payments depend on my anonymous support. Yet Dad has created a narrative where I'm the family leech, draining resources from my successful siblings. But the cruelest revelation comes when I overhear his conversation with Mrs. Patterson from across the table. I worry about her romantic relationships too, Dad says with false concern. She gets attached too quickly, makes poor choices with men. I've had to warn off a few young men who seemed interested, but didn't understand what they'd be getting into. My heart stops. Kevin, the photographer from Boston who asked me out 3 months ago after meeting at a professional conference. We had an amazing first date, incredible chemistry, shared passion for our work. He seemed genuinely interested in seeing me again, then suddenly stopped returning my calls. I assumed he'd lost interest or found someone else. Now I realize Dad probably contacted him. Kevin mentioned during our date that he'd looked up my family online and found Dad's construction company website. It would have been simple for Dad to reach out Father to potential suitor, sharing concerns about my stability and suitability for a serious relationship. The pattern becomes devastatingly clear. Dad hasn't just been passively dismissive of my achievements. He's been actively undermining every area of my life where success might contradict his narrative about my worthlessness. Business opportunities, romantic relationships, even family connections have been poisoned by his deliberate interference. She means well, he continues to Mrs. Patterson, but she's just not equipped for adult responsibilities. I keep hoping she'll mature eventually, but at 32, I'm starting to lose faith. 32 years old, financially supporting the entire family, running 3 successful businesses, and owning 4 investment properties. Yet my own father has convinced our extended family and social circle that I'm an immature, unreliable failure who lives off charity and can't maintain healthy relationships. The envelope in my purse feels heavier now, weighted not just with financial documents, but with the evidence needed to expose the depth of Dad's betrayal. But as I sit here listening to him poison my reputation with lies while accepting my anonymous financial support, I realize that revealing the truth isn't just about setting the record straight anymore. It's about stopping him from destroying any more of my life while he profits from my success. The conversation around me continues, but all I can hear is the sound of my own heartbeat as I prepare to detonate the truth bomb that will end his reign of manipulation forever. The BMW keys cut into my palm as my grip tightens. In a few minutes, I'll walk outside and reclaim that car. But first, I'm going to place these documents on the table and watch his world crumble as completely as he's tried to crush mine. As the dinner conversations continue around me, I find myself studying my siblings with new clarity, seeing past the successful facades Dad has always celebrated. The overhead lighting in the country club dining room casts harsh shadows across their faces, and for the first time, I notice the stress lines and signs of strain they've been hiding behind professional accomplishments and designer clothing. Marcus sits directly across from me, still wearing his hospital scrubs under a hastily thrown-on blazer. At 29, he should be hitting his stride as a third-year resident, but his exhaustion goes deeper than typical medical training fatigue. His hands shake slightly as he reaches for his water glass. Not from overwork, but from the constant stress of financial pressure he's been hiding from the family. During a lull in conversation, I lean forward slightly and catch fragments of his whispered phone conversation with someone named Jennifer. "Can't make the minimum payment this month," he says quietly, one hand cupped over his phone. "The interest is killing me. Can you push the due date back another 2 weeks?" Student loan debt. The conversation makes perfect sense now. Medical school tuition has skyrocketed since Dad's generation, and residency salaries haven't kept pace with education costs. Marcus earns roughly $52,000 annually as a resident, but his student loans total over $320,000. The monthly payments alone consume nearly half his take-home income, leaving little for basic living expenses. What he doesn't know is that I've been making quarterly payments of $3,000 directly to his loan servicer, listed anonymously as benefactor assistance. Those payments have kept him from defaulting, prevented his credit from being destroyed, and reduced his principal balance significantly. Without my intervention, he would have been forced to defer payments and watch interest compound into an insurmountable mountain of debt. Diana presents an even more carefully constructed facade of success. Her designer dress and expensive jewelry create the impression of a thriving legal career, but I notice how she orders the least expensive items from the menu and repeatedly checks her phone with worried expressions. During the appetizer course, she excuses herself to take a call, and I follow discreetly to the ladies' room. I understand the eviction notice, she says desperately into her phone, but I need another month. The Johnson settlement should come through by then, and I can catch up on everything. Her voice cracks with stress as she continues. Please don't file the paperwork. I'm a lawyer. This would destroy my professional reputation if it becomes public record. Eviction notice. The successful attorney Dad brags about to everyone is facing homelessness. Diana's solo practice, which she launched with such optimism 18 months ago, never gained the traction she expected. Legal services have become increasingly competitive, with larger firms offering lower rates and faster turnaround times. Her downtown Hartford office space costs $4,200 monthly in rent, plus utilities, insurance, and support staff expenses. Without her knowledge, I've been covering her office rent and professional liability insurance for the past 8 months. The payments come from my Springfield studio account, processed through a property management company that makes them appear as if they're coming from a benefactor fund for struggling attorneys. Diana believes some anonymous legal foundation has been supporting new practitioners, never imagining her supposedly unsuccessful sister has been preventing her professional and personal bankruptcy. Tyler's situation becomes clear when I overhear his conversation with his wife Sarah during the cocktail hour. The forbearance expires next month, he whispers urgently. If we can't bring the mortgage current, they'll start foreclosure proceedings again. I thought I'd have another job by now. Unemployment. The successful engineer Dad praises to neighbors lost his position at Pratt & Whitney 6 months ago due to company downsizing. Tyler has been interviewing constantly, but engineering positions at his experience level are scarce in Connecticut's current economic climate. His unemployment benefits cover only a fraction of his previous salary, leaving him unable to maintain mortgage payments on the 4-bedroom colonial he and Sarah purchased 2 years ago. My anonymous assistance has kept Tyler's house out of foreclosure. Monthly payments of $2,400 have maintained his mortgage in good standing while he searches for new employment. The payments appear to come from a family assistance fund that Tyler believes was established by Dad using savings from his construction business. He's been deeply grateful for his father's support, never knowing the money comes from his sister's photography studios. The twisted irony becomes unbearable as I watch Dad continue his conversation with Uncle Robert, accepting praise for being such a generous and supportive father. You've really provided well for your children, Uncle Robert says admiringly. Not many parents could help their kids through difficult financial times the way you have. Dad nods modestly, playing the humble patriarch. Family takes care of family, he replies. I worked hard to build something that could support them when they needed it most. Every word is a lie built on my anonymous financial support. The construction business Dad claims provides for everyone has been struggling for 3 years. Commercial construction has slowed throughout New England, and his aging crew can't compete with larger companies that have newer equipment and lower overhead costs. Without the quarterly infusions of cash I provide through carefully disguised business transactions, Dad's company would have filed for bankruptcy over a year ago. But the deepest cut comes when Diana approaches me during dessert service with a carefully calculated expression of sisterly concern. Chelsea, she says quietly, placing her hand on my arm, I think Dad was too harsh tonight. You know he doesn't really mean it when he says things like that. Her sympathy feels genuine until she continues. But maybe this is a good opportunity for some honest family conversation. We've all noticed you've been struggling lately. Marcus and I have talked about maybe helping you get back on your feet financially. The condescension in her voice makes my skin crawl. Diana, whose rent I've been paying for 8 months, wants to offer me financial assistance. The delusion is so complete that she's convinced herself she's in a position to help me when the truth is exactly the opposite. We know it's hard when you're not as established professionally as the rest of us, she continues with fake compassion. But there's no shame in accepting help from family. We could probably pool together some money to help you with rent, or maybe tuition if you want to go back to school for something more practical. Something more practical. Photography. The career that generates more income than all their professions combined is apparently impractical in Diana's mind. The woman who can't afford her own rent wants to help me pay for education in a more suitable field. Marcus joins our conversation, overhearing Diana's offer. That's a great idea, he says earnestly. I can't contribute much right now with residency and everything, but maybe $50 a month until you get stable. $50 a month from the brother whose student loans I've been paying down by thousands of dollars quarterly. The generosity would be touching if it weren't so completely backwards. Marcus genuinely believes he's offering to help his struggling sister, not knowing that his struggling sister has been preventing his financial collapse for years. Tyler approaches our small group with similar intentions. I heard you guys talking about helping Chelsea out, he says quietly. Sarah and I have been discussing it too. Things are tight for us right now with the job situation, but family comes first. We could probably manage $25 or $30 a month. $25 a month from the brother whose mortgage I've been paying. The offer comes from a place of genuine love and concern, which makes it even more painful. Tyler wants to help me despite his own financial crisis, not realizing that his financial crisis would have destroyed his family without my intervention. As I look around at my 3 siblings, each offering to help their struggling sister while surviving on her anonymous support, the full scope of Dad's manipulation becomes clear. He's convinced them they're the successful ones helping the family failure when the reality is completely inverted. They feel generous and accomplished, offering small amounts to help me, never questioning where Dad gets the resources to support their own emergencies. The envelope in my purse contains documents that will shatter these illusions permanently, but as I watch their faces filled with genuine concern and willingness to sacrifice for someone they believe needs help, I realize that revealing the truth will humiliate them as completely as Dad just humiliated me. The difference is they don't deserve it. They've been manipulated just as much as I have, just in a different direction. Dad has convinced them they're successful providers, while I've been the actual provider, and convinced me I'm a failure while I've been supporting everyone's success. Tonight, the lies end for everyone. As I sit here watching my siblings offer their misguided charity, while Dad basks in unearned praise, something inside me finally snaps. The weight of 4 years of deception, manipulation, and financial abuse becomes unbearable. But what pushes me over the edge isn't just tonight's public humiliation. It's the realization that Dad has been orchestrating this entire charade deliberately. When dessert plates are cleared and conversations drift toward coffee and after-dinner drinks, Dad approaches my chair with the satisfied smile of someone who believes he's successfully maintained control over his family narrative. The country club's dim lighting casts shadows across his face that make his expression look almost sinister. Chelsea, he says quietly, placing his hand on my shoulder in what appears to be a paternal gesture to onlookers, could I speak with you privately for a moment? I follow him to a quiet corner near the windows overlooking the golf course, my heart pounding with anticipation of what's about to unfold. The evening air outside looks peaceful and serene, a stark contrast to the emotional storm brewing inside this elegant dining room. I think we need to have an honest conversation. Dad begins, his voice carrying a tone I've never heard before, calculating and cold. About your little business ventures and this fantasy you've been living? The blood drains from my face. He knows. Somehow he's discovered the truth about my success, my businesses, my financial support of the family. But instead of feeling ashamed or grateful, his expression shows something far more disturbing: smug satisfaction. You thought you were so clever, didn't you? He continues, stepping closer so our conversation can't be overheard. Making anonymous payments, hiding your income, playing the mysterious benefactor. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out eventually? My voice catches in my throat as I try to process what he's saying. How long have you known? About 14 months, he replies with casual cruelty. Found some bank statements you left in your old room during Thanksgiving last year. Started doing my own research after that. Richardson Photography Studios in Hartford, Springfield, and Boston. Very impressive, daughter. 14 months. He's known about my success for over a year and continued treating me like a failure while accepting my financial support. The level of calculated manipulation takes my breath away. The real question, Dad continues, is why you felt the need to hide it. Ashamed of your success, afraid we'd expect more from you, or maybe you enjoyed playing the victim while secretly controlling everything from behind the scenes. His words twist reality so completely that I struggle to respond. I was trying to help the family without hurting your pride, I managed to say. I knew you'd feel uncomfortable accepting money from your daughter. Dad laughs quietly, a sound devoid of warmth or humor. Pride. You think this was about my pride. Chelsea, this was about control. Your control. You've been manipulating this entire family for years, making us all dependent on your secret charity while playing the misunderstood artist. The accusation is so backward, so completely opposite of the truth that I feel dizzy. I've been helping because I love this family, because I saw people struggling and had the means to make things better. And what did you get in return? Dad asks with cold precision. The satisfaction of knowing you were superior, the power of controlling everyone's financial stability, the martyr complex of being unappreciated while secretly running the show. His words are like poison, designed to contaminate every good intention I've ever had. He's reframing my generosity as manipulation, my love as control, my sacrifice as selfishness. The psychological warfare is so sophisticated that for a moment I almost believe his version of reality. Here's what's going to happen, Dad continues with calm authority. You're going to continue your anonymous support exactly as you have been. Marcus needs his student loan help. Diana needs her rent assistance. Tyler needs his mortgage payments. And I need my medical bills covered and my country club membership maintained. The demand hits me like a physical blow. He's not grateful or ashamed. He's making threats. If you ever reveal the truth about your financial situation, he says quietly, I'll make sure everyone knows how you've been deceiving them for years, how you manipulated their emotions by letting them struggle while you had millions in the bank, how you enjoyed watching them suffer when you could have helped openly from the beginning. The twisted logic makes my head spin. He's threatening to expose my generosity as cruelty, my help as manipulation. In his version of events, I'm the villain for helping secretly instead of helping openly, even though helping openly would have wounded the pride he claims doesn't matter. Think about how Marcus will feel, Dad continues relentlessly, when he learns his sister watched him stress about student loans while having the money to pay them off completely. Think about Diana's humiliation when she realizes her office rent was charity from the sister she's been pitying. Think about Tyler's shame when he discovers the family assistance fund was just his supposedly unsuccessful sister's money. Each word is calculated to maximize psychological damage. He's weaponizing my family's potential embarrassment to ensure my continued silence and financial support. The emotional blackmail is so sophisticated that I realize this conversation has been planned for months, possibly since he first discovered my secret. You created this situation, he says with false sympathy. You chose deception over honesty. You chose to let them believe you were struggling while they felt superior. Now you have to live with the consequences of those choices or watch your entire family learn what kind of person you really are. The manipulation is breathtaking in its completeness. He's taken my years of selfless giving and reframed them as selfish deception. My attempts to preserve his dignity have become evidence of my desire for control. My love for my family has been twisted into psychological manipulation. I won't let you hurt them, I whisper finally, understanding the trap he's constructed around my own generous nature. You already did hurt them, Dad replies coldly. The moment you decided to help secretly instead of openly, you made them unknowing participants in your deception. The only question now is whether you'll compound that hurt by revealing the truth or whether you'll take responsibility for your choices and continue supporting them quietly. The psychological abuse is so complete that I almost miss the most important revelation in our conversation. He's not discovering my success tonight. He's been exploiting it for over a year while maintaining the public fiction of my failure. Every cruel comment, every dismissive gesture, every moment of public humiliation has been deliberate theater designed to ensure my continued compliance. But as I stand here, listening to him rewrite history to make me the villain of my own generosity, something fundamental shifts inside me. The daughter who has spent 32 years seeking his approval finally sees him clearly for the first time. He's not a proud father whose feelings would be hurt by accepting his daughter's help. He's a manipulative abuser who has weaponized my love for my family to ensure his continued control and comfort. The psychological sophistication of his manipulation doesn't make it less abusive. It makes it more dangerous. You're right about one thing, I say quietly, my voice steadying as clarity replaces confusion. I did make choices that created this situation, but tonight I'm making different choices. His confident expression falters slightly as he hears something in my voice that suggests his control might not be as complete as he believes. Tonight, I continue reaching into my purse. Everyone learns the truth, all of it. The envelope in my hands feels like it weighs nothing and everything all at once as I return to our family table. The documents inside represent more than financial records. They're evidence of a systematic deception that has shaped our family dynamics for years. Dad follows closely behind me, his earlier confidence replaced by growing alarm as he realizes his psychological manipulation may have failed. Could I have everyone's attention, please? I announce, standing beside my chair while 30 relatives pause their conversations to look in my direction. The elegant chandelier above casts warm light across faces that range from curious to concerned, none of them prepared for what's about to unfold. Marcus looks up from his phone with mild interest. Diana sets down her coffee cup with practiced politeness. Tyler stops his conversation with cousin David mid-sentence. Mom, who has been unusually quiet all evening, watches me with an expression I can't quite read, almost as if she's been expecting this moment. I have something to share with the family. I continue my voice, carrying more strength than I've felt in years. Something that will change how we understand our relationships with each other and the truth about who really supports this family. Dad's face has gone pale, but he forces a smile as he takes his seat. Chelsea, perhaps? This isn't the time or place for personal discussions, he says with false gentleness, trying to regain control of the situation. Why don't we talk privately after dinner? No, I reply firmly, surprising myself with the conviction in my voice. This conversation involves everyone at this table, and it's long overdue. I place the envelope on the white tablecloth directly in front of Dad's place setting. The manila folder looks innocuous enough, but I watch his hands tremble slightly as he stares at it without opening it. 2 years ago, I begin my voice carrying across the suddenly silent dining room. Dad's construction business faced bankruptcy due to declining commercial contracts and mounting debt. The company that supposedly built our family's financial foundation was actually drowning in red ink, unable to meet payroll or equipment payments. Uncle Robert shifts uncomfortably in his chair. The narrative he's believed about his successful brother-in-law is about to crumble completely. Aunt Linda leans forward, confusion evident on her face as she tries to reconcile this information with Dad's frequent boasting about business success. Rather than let the family business fail, I continue, I used profits from my photography studios to purchase Richardson Construction outright. The legal documents in that envelope show that I've owned Dad's company for the past 24 months. though I've allowed him to continue operating it as if nothing changed. The silence in the room becomes deafening. Diana's professional training kicks in as she reaches for the envelope, her lawyer instincts telling her to examine the documentation immediately. Dad's hand shoots out to stop her, but she's already extracted the first set of papers. These are legitimate purchase agreements, Diana announces, her voice filled with professional shock. Chelsea Richardson, purchaser. James Richardson, seller. Sale price of $247,000, paid in full on October 15th, 2 years ago. Marcus drops his fork with a clatter that echoes through the stunned silence. Tyler's mouth falls open as he processes the implications of what Diana just read aloud. The family patriarch they've all looked up to sold his business to the daughter he's been calling a failure. But the construction company represents only the beginning of tonight's revelations. The second folder contains financial statements for Richardson Photography Studios. I continue watching Dad's face grow ashen. 3 locations in Hartford, Springfield, and Boston, with combined annual revenue of over $1.6 million. Cousin Janet, the bank manager, understands numbers better than anyone else at the table. "Did you say 1.6 million?" she asks incredulously. "That's more than most small corporations generate." The third folder. I say, my confidence growing with each revelation, contains records of anonymous financial support I've provided to family members over the past 4 years. Dad's medical bills totaling $63,000. Country club membership fees $12,800 annually. The BMW in the parking lot purchased for $48,000. Dad finally finds his voice, though it comes out as a desperate whisper. "Chelsea, please stop. You don't understand what you're doing to this family." "I understand exactly what I'm doing," I reply with calm certainty. "I'm telling the truth for the first time in 4 years. The truth about who really provides for this family, who really built the success Dad takes credit for, and who really deserves respect at this table." Grandma Rose, Dad's 84-year-old mother, has been listening with increasing agitation. "James," she says sharply, using the tone that could still make her grown son squirm, "is this true? Has Chelsea been supporting you while you called her a failure?" The question hangs in the air like a sword about to fall. Dad looks around the table at faces that were admiring him an hour ago and now show confusion, disappointment, and growing anger. The foundation of respect he's built through decades of manipulation is crumbling in real time. "It's complicated," he begins weakly, but Diana cuts him off with the precision of a prosecutor presenting evidence. "There's nothing complicated about these bank statements," she says, scanning the financial documents. "Quarterly payments to Marcus's student loan servicer, $36,000 annually. Monthly rent payments for a downtown Hartford law office, $54,400 annually. That's my office." She adds quietly, her voice filled with dawning realization. Tyler grabs the next set of papers with shaking hands. "Mortgage assistance payments," he reads aloud, his voice breaking. 24 monthly payments of $2,400 each. The family assistance fund that saved our house? It wasn't from Dad at all. The mathematical reality is overwhelming. I've provided over $400,000 in direct family support over 4 years, while Dad accepted credit for generosity he didn't provide and success he didn't earn. Every family gathering where he bragged about supporting his children was built on lies financed by the daughter he consistently humiliated. But perhaps most important, I continue reaching for the final document in the envelope. Is this letter I wrote 6 months ago but never sent. It explains why I felt the need to hide my success and support everyone anonymously instead of openly. The letter is handwritten on my personal stationery, dated 6 months ago when I first considered revealing the truth. As I unfold it, my hands remain steady despite the magnitude of what I'm about to share. "Dear family," I read aloud, I've been hiding the truth about my financial situation for 4 years because I believed Dad's pride and dignity were more important than my own recognition or credit. I thought protecting his role as family patriarch was worth sacrificing my own identity and achievements. I was wrong. The room remains completely silent except for the sound of my voice reading words I never intended to share publicly. But tonight feels like the right time for complete honesty, regardless of the consequences. I've watched Dad take credit for financial support I provide while calling me a failure in front of people I love and respect. I've enabled his dismissal of my accomplishments by refusing to let anyone know about my actual success. I've allowed my siblings to feel superior while I secretly prevented their financial collapse. This deception hurts everyone involved and prevents genuine relationships based on truth and mutual respect. As I finish reading, the silence stretches for what feels like an eternity. 30 relatives process information that completely rewrites everything they thought they knew about our family dynamics. Dad sits motionless, his face a mask of devastation as his carefully constructed image collapses entirely. The BMW keys feel warm in my hand as I prepare for the next phase of tonight's truth-telling. Now, I announce to the stunned gathering, I'm going outside to reclaim the car I bought with money I earned through businesses I built while Dad convinced everyone I was a failure. The walk toward the country club exit feels like a march toward freedom, even though I know the hardest conversations are still ahead. The warm June evening air feels refreshing against my skin as I step outside Golden Oak Country Club's main entrance, leaving behind the shocked silence of 30 relatives processing revelations that have shattered decades of family mythology. The BMW sits in the circular driveway under elegant landscaping lights, looking exactly as pristine as the day I surprised Dad with it 6 months ago. My hands don't shake as I use the spare key to unlock the driver's side door. This isn't theft. It's reclaiming property I paid for with money I earned through businesses I built while being consistently told I was a disappointment. The leather seats still carry the new car smell that made Dad's eyes light up when he first slid behind the wheel. But removing the BMW represents more than reclaiming a single asset. As I settle into the driver's seat and start the engine, I'm simultaneously making phone calls that will reshape our family's financial landscape permanently. My accountant Jennifer answers on the second ring despite the late hour. Chelsea, I saw your text. Are you sure about this timing? She asks, her voice filled with concern about the scope of changes I'm requesting. I'm absolutely certain, I reply, watching through the restaurant windows as animated conversations erupt around our family table. Cancel all anonymous family support payments immediately. Dad's medical bills, country club membership, Marcus's student loans, Diana's rent assistance, Tyler's mortgage help. Everything stops tonight. Jennifer's keyboard clicks rapidly in the background as she accesses multiple accounts. I'm terminating all recurring transfers now, she confirms. The medical payment automation, country club, autopay, and sibling assistance funds are all suspended. Should I send confirmation notices to the recipients? No notices, I decide quickly. Let them discover the changes when payments don't arrive as expected. They'll need to contact the service providers directly to understand their new financial reality. The psychological impact will be significant, but necessary. For 4 years, my family has lived with artificial financial security provided by my anonymous support. Dad's medical care has continued without interruption because I've covered his insurance deductibles and prescription costs. His country club membership has remained active because I've paid annual fees automatically. My siblings have maintained their lifestyles because I've prevented their financial collapse quietly. Starting tomorrow, they'll experience the true cost of their choices without my safety net. Dad will receive bills for medical expenses he can't afford. The country club will demand payment for membership fees his construction business can't cover. Marcus will face student loan payments that consume half his residency income. Diana will confront office rent that exceeds her struggling law practice revenue. Tyler will struggle with mortgage payments his unemployment benefits can't support. But as I make these calls from the BMW's front seat, I'm not motivated by revenge or cruelty. I'm motivated by the recognition that my anonymous support has enabled Dad's psychological abuse and prevented my family from understanding their actual financial circumstances. They've made life choices based on artificial security I provided while receiving no credit or appreciation for that support. Also, I continue with Jennifer, transfer ownership of Richardson Construction back to James Richardson immediately. I don't want to own his business anymore, regardless of the financial implications. This decision will cost me significantly. Richardson Construction, while struggling, has valuable equipment contracts and real estate that represent nearly $250,000 in assets. But keeping ownership would mean maintaining financial ties to Dad that I can no longer tolerate. The construction company transfer will take several days to process through legal channels. Jennifer warns, are you prepared for the potential financial loss if the business fails after you return ownership? I'm prepared, I answer without hesitation. I never wanted to own Dad's company. I wanted to help him maintain his dignity and independence. Since that approach has clearly failed, he can have his business back and deal with its problems himself. Through the restaurant windows, I can see Uncle Robert gesturing animatedly while pointing at the documents still scattered across our table. Aunt Linda appears to be arguing with Dad, her face flushed with anger. Cousin David has pulled out his phone, possibly researching my business claims online to verify their accuracy. The valet attendants have noticed my extended presence in the BMW and approach with polite confusion. Everything all right with your vehicle, miss? Asks the younger man, probably wondering why I'm making phone calls instead of driving away. Everything's perfect, I reply honestly. I'm just handling some business that's been postponed too long. My next call goes to Marcus's student loan servicer, where I navigate automated systems to reach a representative who can remove my benefactor assistance authorization immediately. The quarterly payments of $3,000 that have been keeping Marcus's loans in good standing will stop with this month's billing cycle. I need to cancel ongoing third-party assistance for account holder Marcus Richardson. I explain to the representative, all future payments must come directly from the borrower. The representative confirms the change will take effect within 48 hours. Marcus will receive notification that his benefactor assistance program has ended and full payment responsibility returns to him. Without my quarterly support, his minimum monthly payments will increase from manageable amounts to figures that will strain his residency budget severely. Diana's rent situation requires a different approach. The property management company that handles her office space believes the payments come from a legal foundation supporting new attorneys. I call their after-hours number to cancel the automatic assistance program that has kept Diana's practice afloat for 8 months. The Legal Foundation Beneficiary Program for tenant Diana Richardson needs immediate termination, I explained to the night manager. No future payments will be processed through our assistance account. Diana will discover this change when she receives her next rent notice, which will reflect the full monthly amount without assistance. Her struggling practice generates barely enough revenue to cover basic operating expenses, let alone $4,200 in monthly office rent. She'll likely need to close the downtown location and work from a home office or shared space. Tyler's mortgage assistance proves most complex to cancel because the payments have been processed through a family assistance fund that appears to come from Dad's construction company. Terminating this support will require careful explanation to avoid immediate foreclosure proceedings. I need to speak with a supervisor about ending participation in a family assistance program. I tell the mortgage company representative, the funding source is no longer available, and the borrower needs to resume normal payment responsibility. The supervisor explains that Tyler will receive written notice of the program termination within 1 week, followed by a 30-day transition period to arrange alternative payment methods. Without my monthly assistance, Tyler's unemployment benefits will cover only a fraction of his mortgage obligation. As I complete these financial adjustments from the BMW's front seat, I watch Dad emerge from the restaurant looking haggard and desperate. He scans the parking area until he spots his missing car, then approaches with hurried steps that suggest panic rather than anger. "Chelsea," he calls out as he reaches the driver's side window, "we need to talk about this situation rationally." "We already talked," I reply calmly, lowering the window just enough for conversation. "You made it clear that you've known about my business success for over a year while continuing to treat me like a failure. You threatened me with family humiliation if I ever revealed the truth. You've been sabotaging my professional relationships and romantic opportunities while accepting my financial support." His face cycles through emotions: desperation, anger, fear, and something that might be genuine regret. "I made mistakes," he admits quietly, "but destroying the family's financial stability won't fix anything." "I'm not destroying anything," I correct him gently. "I'm removing artificial supports that have prevented everyone from understanding their real circumstances. You'll all need to make decisions based on actual resources instead of my anonymous charity." Dad's eyes fill with tears that may be genuine or calculated. "Your siblings will suffer because of this. Marcus could lose his apartment. Diana might have to close her practice. Tyler could lose his house. Their suffering will be real." I agree sadly, but it will also be honest. They'll understand the true cost of their choices and the actual value of financial independence. Most importantly, they'll stop taking credit for success they didn't earn while calling their provider a failure. As I prepare to drive away in the car I bought with money I earned through businesses I built while being called a loser, Dad makes one final desperate appeal. "What do you want from me?" An apology. Public acknowledgement. "I'll do whatever it takes to fix this." I consider his offer for a moment, then shake my head. "It's too late for fixes, Dad. You had over a year to acknowledge the truth after discovering my success. Instead, you chose to exploit it while maintaining public fiction about my worthlessness. Those choices have consequences." The BMW's engine purrs quietly as I prepare to leave Golden Oak Country Club for the last time as someone who accepts being called a family failure. Tomorrow, I'll begin rebuilding relationships with family members based on truth instead of manipulation, respect instead of charity, and healthy boundaries instead of enabling destructive dynamics. Dad stands in the parking area, watching his financial safety net drive away, finally understanding that his daughter's patience and generosity have limits he should never have tested. The drive home takes only 12 minutes, but I spend the entire journey oscillating between relief and anxiety about the chaos I've left behind at Golden Oak Country Club. The BMW handles beautifully on the winding Connecticut roads, its premium sound system playing classical music that creates a surreal soundtrack for the emotional earthquake I've just triggered. My phone buzzes constantly with text messages from family members, but I ignore them all. Tonight isn't about managing their reactions or mitigating damage from the truth. Tonight is about finally stepping out from behind the curtain of anonymous generosity and allowing authentic relationships to develop without financial manipulation on either side. By the time I reach my downtown Hartford apartment, the sun has set completely, and the city lights create a peaceful ambiance that contrasts sharply with the family drama playing out 15 miles away. I park the BMW in my designated space and notice how perfectly it fits next to my Porsche Cayenne, which I've been hiding from family gatherings for 3 years. Inside my apartment, the minimalist design and carefully chosen art pieces reflect the aesthetic sensibilities Dad has consistently dismissed as impractical. Photography equipment fills one spare bedroom that serves as my home studio, while the other bedroom contains the business management setup where I coordinate 3 studios and manage investment portfolios worth over $2 million. The irony isn't lost on me that I've been living this successful, independent life while attending family gatherings, dressed like someone who shops at discount stores and drives an aging Honda Civic. The psychological toll of maintaining such elaborate deception has been exhausting in ways I'm only beginning to understand. My phone rings with a call from Diana, which I answer hesitantly. Her voice carries a mixture of shock, embarrassment, and something that might be genuine curiosity about the sister she's clearly never understood. "Chelsea, I need to ask you something directly." She begins without preamble. "How long have you been paying my office rent?" The question deserves honest answer. 8 months, I reply simply. Your practice was 3 months behind on payments when I started the assistance program. I didn't want you to lose your downtown location during the critical early phase of building your client base. Silence stretches for nearly 30 seconds as Diana processes this information. I thought it was a legal foundation grant. She finally says, her voice smaller than I've heard since childhood. I applied for so many assistance programs that I assumed one finally came through. There was no legal foundation, I explained gently. I created that fiction to preserve your professional dignity while preventing bankruptcy. The payments came directly from my Springfield studio account, processed through a property management company to maintain anonymity. Diana's breathing becomes irregular as the full scope of her misunderstanding becomes clear. "Jesus, Chelsea, I offered to help you financially tonight. I actually thought you needed money from us." The painful irony hangs between us like a heavy curtain. "I know," I reply softly. "Dad has been very effective at convincing everyone that I'm the family failure while accepting credit for generosity I provide anonymously." "Oh, why didn't you tell us the truth?" Diana asks, her lawyer instincts seeking logical explanations for behavior that defies conventional understanding. "Why let us think you were struggling when you were actually supporting all of us?" The question touches the heart of everything that went wrong tonight, because I believed protecting Dad's pride and dignity was more important than receiving credit for my success. I admit, I thought keeping the family together was worth sacrificing my own recognition and self-respect. I was wrong about that. Diana falls silent again, processing information that contradicts years of assumptions about family dynamics and personal relationships. When she speaks again, her voice carries professional respect. I've never heard from her before. "Your business generates over $1 million annually," she asks, still struggling to reconcile this reality with her previous understanding. $1.6 million last year, I correct. Richardson Photography Studios employ 14 people across 3 locations. We're booked 18 months in advance and have waiting lists for most premium services. The numbers represent more than financial success. They represent professional achievement that Dad has consistently dismissed while praising Diana's struggling solo practice that barely covers operating expenses. The reversal of perceived success is complete and devastating to previous family narratives. "I have to go," Diana says suddenly. "I need to think about everything that happened tonight. But Chelsea, thank you for helping me when I couldn't help myself. I'm sorry I didn't recognize what you were doing." The call ends before I can respond, leaving me alone with the silence of my apartment and the weight of relationships that will need complete rebuilding based on truth instead of fiction. Marcus calls. 20 minutes later, his voice strained with exhaustion and emotional overwhelm. "Chelsea, I just got off the phone with my student loan servicer," he begins shakily. "They said my benefactor assistance program has been terminated. I didn't even know I had a benefactor assistance program." "You've had anonymous support for your student loans for 3 years," I explained carefully. "Quarterly payments of $3,000 have been keeping your account in good standing and reducing your principal balance significantly." The silence that follows lasts so long I wonder if the call has been disconnected. When Marcus finally speaks, his voice breaks with emotion. "That was you. All this time you've been helping me pay for medical school. I couldn't watch you struggle with debt that would take decades to repay on a residency salary." I reply honestly. Medical education costs have become unconscionable, and I had the resources to make your debt manageable without affecting my own financial security. Marcus begins crying softly, the sound barely audible through the phone connection. "I've been so stressed about money," he whispers. "Some nights I couldn't sleep because the interest was accumulating faster than I could make minimum payments. I thought I'd spend my entire career buried under debt from school." The psychological relief in his voice is heartbreaking. For 3 years, Marcus has carried crushing anxiety about student loan debt that would have destroyed his financial future. My anonymous assistance allowed him to focus on medical training instead of financial survival, but he never knew where that relief originated. "Why didn't you tell me?" He asks through tears. "I would have been so grateful. I would have found ways to pay you back eventually." "I didn't want gratitude or repayment," I explained gently. "I wanted my brother to become a doctor without drowning in debt. I wanted to use my success to help someone I love achieve their dreams. That seemed more important than getting credit for the help." Marcus struggles to speak through his emotional breakdown. "But I offered you $50 tonight. I actually thought I was helping you when you've been supporting me for years. How could Dad let that happen?" The question highlights the sophisticated nature of Dad's manipulation. He convinced my siblings they were the successful ones helping their struggling sister, while I was actually preventing their financial collapse. The psychological cruelty of that deception has wounded everyone involved. "Dad has been maintaining fiction that serves his emotional needs," I reply carefully. "He needed to believe he was the family patriarch providing for everyone, so he accepted credit for generosity he didn't provide while calling the actual provider a failure." Marcus falls silent as he processes the systematic nature of Dad's psychological abuse. When he speaks again, his voice carries anger I've rarely heard from my gentle brother. "This is so fucked up," he says with unusual profanity. "He's been treating you like garbage while you kept our entire family afloat financially. How is that even possible?" The answer requires examining psychological dynamics that have shaped our family for decades. Dad's self-worth depends on being seen as successful and generous, I explain. My actual success threatened that narrative. So he created an alternative reality where I was struggling while he provided for everyone. My anonymous support made that fiction sustainable. "Well, it's not sustainable anymore," Marcus says with growing conviction. "After tonight, everyone knows the truth about who really supports this family. Dad can't maintain his lies when the evidence is sitting on the dinner table." But even as Marcus expresses support and gratitude, I recognize that removing my financial assistance will create genuine hardship for him and our other siblings. They'll need to adjust their lifestyles and expectations based on actual resources instead of artificial security I've provided. The phone calls continue throughout the evening as family members process revelations that have shattered their understanding of relationships, success, and the true source of financial stability they've enjoyed for years. Each conversation brings new evidence of how completely Dad's manipulation has warped our family dynamics. By midnight, the full scope of tonight's nuclear explosion becomes clear. The family mythology built on Dad's lies has collapsed entirely, but the authentic relationships that might replace it haven't emerged yet. Tomorrow will bring new challenges as everyone adapts to financial realities they've avoided confronting for years. But tonight, for the first time in 4 years, I fall asleep without carrying the burden of maintaining elaborate deceptions or protecting feelings of people who've shown no concern for mine. The relief is profound and healing in ways I never expected. The morning after the Golden Oak revelation brings a series of phone calls that reshape our family landscape permanently. I wake up in my Hartford apartment to 17 missed calls, 43 text messages, and 6 voicemails from relatives processing the emotional earthquake that shattered decades of carefully constructed mythology. The first call comes from Grandma Rose at 7:30 in the morning, her voice carrying the steely determination that made her a formidable matriarch for 8 decades. "Chelsea, dear, I need to speak with you about your father's behavior last night." She begins without preamble. "What I witnessed at dinner was completely unacceptable." Grandma Rose has always been Dad's fiercest defender, justifying his harsh treatment of me as character-building tough love that would eventually make me stronger. Hearing criticism from her feels like validation from an unexpected source. "I had no idea you'd been supporting the family financially." She continues, her voice filled with genuine regret. "Your father led everyone to believe you were struggling while he provided for your siblings. Learning the truth about your success and his deception has left me deeply disappointed in my son." The conversation reveals that Grandma Rose spent the entire ride home interrogating Dad about the documents I'd presented. His attempts to minimize or reframe the revelations only deepened her anger as she realized the scope of his psychological manipulation. "I slapped him in the parking lot," she admits with satisfaction that surprises me. "At 84 years old, I slapped my grown son for being cruel to his daughter while accepting her charity. I'm not proud of the violence, but I'm proud of standing up for what's right." The image of tiny Grandma Rose confronting her much larger son brings a smile to my face, despite the emotional complexity of our situation. "Thank you for defending me," I reply gratefully. "It means more than you know to have your support." "You'll have more than my support," she promises firmly. "I'm calling every family member who was at dinner last night to make sure they understand the real story. Your father's version of events will not become the family narrative if I have anything to say about it." The second call comes from Uncle Robert, whose voice carries embarrassment and genuine remorse for years of dismissive treatment based on Dad's lies. "Chelsea, I owe you an enormous apology," he begins heavily. "I've been referring photography clients away from you based on your father's claims about your unreliability and financial problems." The admission confirms my suspicions about Dad's systematic sabotage of my professional relationships. Uncle Robert's position on the country club's event planning committee made him perfectly positioned to refer high-end clients to my business. But Dad's lies redirected those opportunities to competitors. The Henderson wedding alone would have been worth $15,000. Uncle Robert continues with growing anger. The Morrison anniversary party, the Whitfield corporate event, the Patterson family reunion. I steered all of those contracts away from you because your father convinced me you weren't dependable. The financial impact of Dad's sabotage becomes staggering as Uncle Robert lists missed opportunities. Over the past 2 years, his redirected referrals cost me approximately $67,000 in lost revenue, not counting the additional bookings that would have resulted from satisfied clients in those social circles. "I'm going to spend today calling every event planner and family I know to correct the misinformation your father spread." Uncle Robert promises, "Your business deserves those referrals based on your actual reputation, not your father's lies." But the most emotionally significant call comes from Aunt Linda Mom's younger sister, whose voice carries fierce, protective anger I've never heard directed at Dad before. "That brother-in-law of mine has always been a controlling bully," she says bluntly, "but what he did to you goes beyond ordinary family dysfunction into deliberate psychological abuse." Aunt Linda's professional background in social work gives her insights into family dynamics that other relatives lack. Her analysis of Dad's behavior carries weight that casual observations might not. "James systematically isolated you from family support while exploiting your financial generosity," she explains with clinical precision. "He undermined your professional reputation, sabotaged your romantic relationships, and created a false narrative about your worth and capabilities." That's not tough love or misguided parenting. That's calculated emotional abuse. Her words provide professional validation for feelings I've struggled to articulate. The pattern of Dad's behavior shows deliberate manipulation rather than mere insensitivity or misunderstanding. More importantly, Aunt Linda continues, he weaponized your own generosity against you by making your siblings unknowingly complicit in his deception. Every time Marcus or Diana offered to help you financially, they were participating in James's false narrative about your circumstances, whether they realized it or not. The psychological sophistication of Dad's manipulation becomes clearer through Aunt Linda's analysis. He didn't just lie about my situation, he created systemic dynamics that reinforce those lies through my siblings' well-intentioned but misguided offers of assistance. Your mother called me this morning, Aunt Linda reveals. She's been aware of James's treatment of you for years, but felt powerless to intervene effectively. Last night's revelations have given her the evidence and support she needs to finally stand up to him. The mention of Mom's situation brings new complexity to an already overwhelming family restructuring. Their marriage has survived 34 years, but the foundation of respect and trust has been eroded by Dad's systematic dishonesty about fundamental family dynamics. Linda's moving in with me temporarily, Mom's voice says as she takes the phone from her sister. I can't continue living with someone who treats our daughter so cruelly while accepting her financial support. James needs to understand that his behavior has consequences for everyone in this family. Mom's decision to leave Dad, even temporarily, represents the most dramatic response to last night's revelations. Their marriage has weathered many storms over 3 decades, but discovering Dad's deliberate manipulation of me while accepting my anonymous charity has crossed a line she can't forgive easily. I've been saving articles about your photography awards for 25 years, Mom admits tearfully. Every newspaper mentioned every client testimonial, every recognition of your artistic talent. I kept them all in a scrapbook James never knew about. I was always proud of you, but I was afraid to contradict his narrative about your lack of direction. The revelation that Mom has been secretly celebrating my achievements while publicly remaining silent about Dad's dismissiveness adds another layer of painful family dysfunction. She's been caught between loyalty to her husband and love for her daughter, choosing peace over truth in ways that enabled Dad's continued abuse. I should have defended you years ago, she continues through tears. I should have called out James's cruelty instead of hoping it would improve on its own. My silence made me complicit in his treatment of you, and I'm deeply sorry for that failure. The family reckoning extends beyond immediate relatives as cousins. Aunts and uncles process information that contradicts years of assumptions about our family dynamics. Cousin Janet calls to apologize for cold treatment based on Dad's lies about my financial irresponsibility. Cousin David admits he avoided inviting me to professional networking events because Dad convinced him I was unemployable in serious business contexts. Each conversation reveals new evidence of how systematically Dad has poisoned my relationships within our extended family, while maintaining his own reputation as a generous patriarch providing for struggling children. The scope of his deception required consistent, deliberate effort over many years. But perhaps most painful is the call from Tyler's wife Sarah, whose voice breaks as she describes their mortgage situation. Tyler is devastated, she whispers. He's been so grateful for what he thought was your father's financial support during his unemployment. Learning that you've been preventing our foreclosure while being called a family failure has broken his heart. Tyler himself is too emotional to speak coherently, but Sarah explains how my anonymous mortgage assistance allowed them to maintain stability during his job search without the crushing anxiety of potential homelessness. Your brother has been telling everyone what a generous father he has. Sarah continues, he bragged to neighbors about James helping with the mortgage. Now he understands that his sister was his family's savior, while his father took credit for generosity he didn't provide. The psychological impact on Tyler goes beyond embarrassment into genuine emotional trauma. His entire understanding of family relationships and personal worth has been shattered by learning that his successful father was actually his struggling sister in disguise. Tyler wants to pay you back, Sarah offers desperately. We know we can't repay 24 months of mortgage assistance immediately, but we can set up payment plans once he finds new employment. I don't want repayment, I reply gently. I wanted my brother's family to avoid foreclosure during a difficult period. The assistance accomplished that goal, and I'm grateful I was in a position to help. But as these conversations continue throughout the morning, a clear pattern emerges. The family members who've discovered my anonymous support express genuine gratitude and remorse for their previous dismissiveness. The siblings who directly benefited from my financial assistance are eager to repair relationships and understand their true circumstances. Dad, however, remains isolated in his refusal to acknowledge wrongdoing or express genuine remorse for his systematic manipulation. According to multiple family members, he's spent the morning trying to minimize the significance of last night's revelations and maintain some version of his narrative about being an effective family provider. The reckoning is far from over, but the foundation has shifted permanently. The daughter, who was consistently called a failure, has been revealed as the family's financial backbone, while the patriarch, who claimed credit for everyone's success, has been exposed as a manipulative fraud whose generosity existed only in his imagination. Truth has a way of reshaping relationships in ways that can't be undone, and our family will never function according to the old lies again. 3 days after the Golden Oak revelation, I'm sitting in my Hartford studio reviewing client portfolios when my assistant Sarah announces an unexpected visitor. "Chelsea, your father is here," she says cautiously, clearly aware of the recent family drama. "He's asking to speak with you privately." Dad enters my office looking like he's aged 5 years in 3 days. His usual confident posture has been replaced by slumped shoulders and hesitant movements that suggest someone who's lost his psychological footing completely. The expensive clothes that once projected success now seem like costumes that no longer fit his diminished circumstances. "I need to discuss the situation with you." He begins settling into the client chair across from my desk without invitation. The presumption of welcome that once characterized his interactions with me has evaporated, replaced by uncertain deference that feels foreign and uncomfortable. "What situation would that be?" I ask calmly, not making this conversation easier for him than necessary. "The financial arrangements," he replies vaguely, avoiding direct acknowledgement of his manipulation or my generosity. "We need to find a way to restore stability for everyone involved." The careful language reveals Dad's continued inability to take responsibility for his actions or acknowledge the scope of harm he's caused. Even now, facing consequences for years of psychological abuse, he frames the conversation as a mutual problem requiring joint solutions rather than his misconduct requiring accountability. "The financial arrangements have been clarified," I reply firmly. "Everyone now understands who has been supporting whom, and those arrangements have been terminated permanently." Dad's face cycles through emotions as he realizes his attempt to negotiate a return to previous dynamics will fail. "But Marcus could lose his apartment," he argues desperately. "Diana might have to close her practice. Tyler could face foreclosure again." "Yes," I agree matter-of-factly. "Those are possible consequences of their actual financial circumstances without my anonymous support. They'll need to make decisions based on real resources instead of artificial security I provided, while receiving no credit or appreciation." The directness of my response seems to shock him. For 32 years, I've been the family member who absorbed criticism, accepted blame, and prioritized other people's comfort over my own truth. The woman sitting across from him now operates from a completely different emotional framework. "I made mistakes," He admits reluctantly, the words seeming to cause physical pain. I should have acknowledged your success instead of maintaining the fiction about your struggles. The admission represents progress, but it falls far short of genuine accountability. Dad is acknowledging tactical errors in maintaining his deception, rather than examining the psychological cruelty of his underlying behavior. You made deliberate choices, I correct him firmly. For 14 months after discovering my business success, you continued calling me a failure while accepting my financial support. You systematically sabotage my professional relationships and romantic opportunities while taking credit for generosity you didn't provide. Those weren't mistakes. They were calculated acts of emotional abuse. Dad's face flushes as he's confronted with the systematic nature of his manipulation laid out in clear terms. I was trying to maintain family harmony, he protests weakly. I thought acknowledging your success would create resentment among your siblings. No, I reply with quiet certainty, you were maintaining your own ego at my expense. You needed to believe you were the successful family patriarch, so you created a false narrative that positioned me as a failure while you took credit for financial stability I provided. The psychological analysis clearly makes him uncomfortable, but I continue because these truths need to be spoken aloud. You weaponized my love for this family against me by threatening to expose my deception if I ever revealed the truth. You made me complicit in my own humiliation by convincing me that protecting your feelings was more important than protecting my own dignity. Dad stands up abruptly and begins pacing around my office, his agitation growing as he's forced to confront the calculated nature of his behavior. Fine, he says with rising anger. Maybe I handled things poorly, but you created this situation by helping secretly instead of openly. You chose deception over honesty. The attempted reversal of blame is so predictable that I almost smile. Even faced with overwhelming evidence of his psychological manipulation, Dad is trying to make me responsible for the problems his behavior created. I have documentation that proves otherwise. I announce, calmly reaching for a file folder I've prepared for exactly this conversation. The manila envelope contains evidence that will shift the power dynamic between us permanently. Dad stops pacing as he notices the folder, his face showing wariness about what new revelations might be coming. What kind of documentation? The recordings. I reply, simply opening the folder to reveal transcripts and audio storage devices. 23 recorded conversations spanning the past 18 months, including last night's threats about family humiliation if I revealed the truth about my financial support. The blood drains from Dad's face as he realizes the scope of evidence I've compiled. You recorded our private conversations without my knowledge. Connecticut is a one-party consent state. I explain with calm professionalism. I legally recorded conversations where I was a participant, particularly after I began therapy, to address the psychological impact of your systematic emotional abuse. The transcripts contain verbatim documentation of Dad's most manipulative statements, his threats about family consequences if I revealed my success, and his admission that he'd known about my business achievements for over a year while continuing to call me a failure publicly. Dr. Martinez suggested I document our interactions after I described the pattern of manipulation and psychological control. I continue watching Dad's expression shift from anger to genuine fear. She recognized the sophisticated nature of your emotional abuse and recommended creating evidence that could support legal action if necessary. Dad sinks back into the client chair, his earlier bravado completely deflated. Legal action. You're threatening to sue your own father. I'm not threatening anything, I clarify. I'm explaining that your behavior constitutes harassment and emotional abuse under Connecticut law, and I have documentation that would support criminal charges if I chose to pursue them. The recording that carries the most legal weight is from 2 months ago when Dad explicitly threatened to destroy my relationships with extended family if I ever revealed my financial success. His voice on the audio clearly states his intention to make sure everyone knows what kind of manipulative person you really are if I stopped providing anonymous support. Extortion and harassment charges would seriously impact your construction business. I continue matter-of-factly. Most commercial clients prefer contractors who don't have pending criminal cases or restraining orders affecting their professional reputation. Dad's face goes ashen as he realizes I'm not just emotionally wounded daughter anymore. I'm a successful businesswoman with legal resources and professional expertise who won't tolerate continued abuse. The power dynamic he's controlled for 32 years has shifted completely. "What do you want from me?" he asks quietly, his voice stripped of its usual authoritative tone. "I want you to stop," I reply simply. "Stop spreading lies about my professional reliability. Stop sabotaging my business relationships. Stop taking credit for financial support you don't provide. Stop treating me like a failure while accepting my charity." The demands are reasonable, but represent complete dismantling of the psychological control Dad has maintained over our family dynamics for decades. He would need to acknowledge my actual achievements, admit his previous deceptions, and rebuild relationships based on truth rather than manipulation. And if I refuse, he asks, though his tone suggests he already knows the answer, then I'll file harassment charges and request a restraining order that prevents you from contacting my business clients or interfering with my professional activities. I reply calmly. I'll also provide copies of these recordings to every family member so they can understand the systematic nature of your manipulation over the years. Dad sits in stunned silence for several minutes, processing the complete reversal of power between us. The daughter he's controlled through psychological manipulation now holds legal documentation of his abuse and the financial resources to pursue consequences he can't afford. "I need time to think about this," he finally says, standing to leave with movements that suggest defeat rather than strategic retreat. "Take all the time you need," I reply cordially, "but understand that my patience with your behavior has ended permanently. The next conversation we have will be based on mutual respect and honest acknowledgement of our actual circumstances, or it will be our last conversation." As Dad leaves my office without his usual parting demands or manipulative comments, I realize that the balance of family power has shifted irrevocably. The daughter who spent 32 years seeking his approval has become a woman who sets boundaries and enforces consequences for people who violate them. The recordings will remain in my files as insurance against future manipulation, but I hope they'll never be needed. Dad now understands that continued psychological abuse will trigger legal consequences he can't afford or survive professionally. For the first time in our relationship, we're operating as equals rather than controller and victim. The morning after Dad's visit to my office, I receive a phone call that changes the trajectory of our family crisis in ways I never expected. Mom's voice carries a strength and determination I haven't heard since my childhood, before years of living with Dad's controlling behavior wore down her natural assertiveness. "Kasai Chelsea, I need to tell you something I should have said 25 years ago." She begins without preamble, her words carrying the weight of decades of suppressed truth. "Your father's treatment of you has been wrong from the beginning, and my silence has been equally wrong." The conversation takes place while I'm sitting in my Hartford apartment still processing the confrontation with Dad and its implications for our family's future. Mom's call feels like sunlight breaking through storm clouds that have darkened our family landscape for years. "I have boxes of documentation about your achievements that I've been hiding from your father," she continues, her voice gaining strength as she speaks. "Every newspaper article about your photography awards, every client testimonial, every recognition of your artistic talent. I saved them all because I was proud of you even when I couldn't say so openly." The revelation that Mom has been secretly documenting my success while publicly remaining silent about Dad's dismissiveness adds another layer to our family's complex emotional dynamics. She's been caught between loyalty to her marriage and love for her daughter, choosing what seemed like peace over truth in ways that inadvertently enabled Dad's psychological abuse. "Why didn't you ever show me those articles?" I asked, genuinely curious about her thought process during those difficult years. "Because I was a coward," she admits with brutal honesty. "I told myself I was keeping peace in the family, but I was really avoiding confrontation with your father. I convinced myself that my private support was enough, that you knew I loved you even if I couldn't defend you publicly." Mom's analysis of her own behavior shows remarkable self-awareness and genuine accountability. Unlike Dad's attempts to minimize or justify his actions, she's taking full responsibility for choices that prioritize her comfort over my well-being. But last Sunday night changed everything. She continues with growing conviction. "Watching your father humiliate you publicly while knowing you'd been supporting our entire family financially was the breaking point I should have reached years ago." The decisive moment for Mom came not just from learning about my financial support, but from recognizing how completely Dad's manipulation had distorted our family's understanding of success, failure, and mutual support. The cognitive dissonance between his public treatment of me and private acceptance of my charity became impossible for her to rationalize. I confronted him when we got home from the country club. She reveals her voice, carrying anger that surprises me with its intensity. I told him exactly what I thought about his behavior and demanded that he apologize to you immediately and publicly. Dad's reaction to Mom's confrontation apparently revealed the depth of his psychological investment in maintaining the fiction about my worthlessness. Instead of expressing remorse or acknowledging wrongdoing, he doubled down on his narrative and became defensive about his treatment of me. "He said you deserved criticism for deceiving the family about your financial situation," Mom continues with disgust. "He actually argued that calling you a failure was justified because you'd been manipulative by helping anonymously instead of openly." The twisted logic that transforms generosity into manipulation and support into deception represents Dad's psychological defense mechanism when confronted with evidence that contradicts his preferred narrative. Rather than acknowledging his cruelty, he reframes it as appropriate response to my supposed misconduct. "That's when I realized our marriage couldn't continue as it has been," Mom says with quiet determination. "I can't live with someone who treats our daughter so cruelly while benefiting from her financial generosity. Some lines can't be uncrossed, and your father crossed them deliberately and repeatedly." Mom's decision to leave their shared home represents more than temporary separation. It signals her recognition that Dad's behavior toward me reflects character flaws that make him unsuitable as a life partner. After 34 years of marriage, she's prioritizing justice and family healing over marital convenience. "I'm staying with Linda temporarily, but I'm also looking at apartments." She continues describing practical steps toward independence that suggest serious long-term planning rather than impulsive reaction to recent events. The conversation takes an unexpected turn when Mom reveals she's been researching my business achievements online, reading client testimonials, and industry recognition I've received over the years. "I had no idea your work was so highly regarded professionally," she admits with a mixture of pride and regret. Richardson Photography Studios has 5-star ratings on every review platform. She says, clearly having done extensive research, brides describe your work as life-changing and absolutely perfect. Industry publications have featured your techniques in professional development articles. You're not just successful, you're genuinely excellent at what you do. Her research represents effort to understand my actual achievements, rather than Dad's dismissive characterizations of my career as playing with cameras. The contrast between professional recognition and family dismissal has become impossible for her to ignore. I'm going to spend today calling every family member who attended Sunday's dinner. Mom announces with determination that reminds me of her younger self before years of dad's control wore down her confidence. I want them to understand the real story about your success and your father's behavior. The campaign to correct family narratives represents mom's attempt to repair damage from years of enabling dad's lies through silence. She recognizes that passive support isn't sufficient to counteract active manipulation, and she's prepared to take public positions that she avoided for decades. But perhaps most significantly, Mom asks about visiting my photography studios to see my professional achievements firsthand. I want to understand the business empire you built while we were all convinced you were struggling, she says with genuine curiosity rather than skepticism or judgment. The tour of my Hartford studio takes place that afternoon, and Mom's reaction to seeing my professional environment provides emotional healing I didn't know I needed. She examines client portfolios with artistic appreciation, reads industry awards with obvious pride, and asks detailed questions about business operations that show genuine interest in my achievements. "This is incredible," she says, while reviewing wedding albums that showcase my signature style of intimate, emotional photography. "Your work captures feelings that will matter to these families for generations. This isn't just a business. It's artistry that preserves life's most precious moments." The recognition from Mom feels more meaningful than any professional accolade because it comes from someone who understands my personal journey and the obstacles I've overcome to achieve success. Her validation carries weight that external recognition cannot provide. "I'm going to frame some of these newspaper articles about your awards," she decides while looking through the portfolio of media coverage. "I want them displayed in my new apartment, where I can show them to visitors with pride instead of hiding them in boxes." The symbolic gesture represents Mom's transition from secret supporter to public advocate for my achievements. She's no longer willing to maintain Dad's fiction about my lack of direction or success. As we conclude the studio tour, Mom makes a commitment that surprises me with its specificity and determination. "I'm going to attend the next family gathering wearing a t-shirt with your business logo," she announces with mischievous satisfaction. "Everyone will know exactly where I stand regarding your father's lies and your actual achievements." The image of my traditionally conservative mother wearing photography, business promotional clothing to family events brings the first genuine laughter I've experienced since Sunday's confrontation. Her willingness to make such public statements represents complete rejection of the diplomatic silence she's maintained for years. "Your father lost more than financial support when he decided to humiliate you publicly," Mom observes as we prepare to leave the studio. "He lost his wife's respect, his mother's support, and his entire family's trust. Those consequences will last much longer than any monetary assistance you provided." The conversation ends with Mom expressing hope that Dad will eventually recognize the magnitude of his mistakes and make genuine efforts toward accountability and repair. But she's also clear that her support for me no longer depends on his cooperation or approval. For the first time in 25 years, I have an unambiguous ally within my immediate family who's prepared to defend my achievements and challenge Dad's manipulation publicly. The power balance that has dominated our family dynamics for decades continues shifting toward truth and justice. The week following Mom's decision to leave Dad brings a series of conversations with my siblings that reveal how differently each of them is processing the revelations about our family's true financial dynamics. Their responses range from genuine remorse and efforts toward repair to calculated manipulation that echoes Dad's own psychological tactics. Marcus calls me Thursday evening from his small apartment near the hospital, his voice carrying exhaustion that goes beyond typical residency fatigue. "Chelsea, I need to apologize for so many things I don't even know where to start." He begins with obvious emotional strain. The conversation that follows lasts over 2 hours and covers years of accumulated misunderstandings, missed opportunities for genuine connection, and the gradual erosion of sibling relationships under Dad's manipulative influence. Marcus demonstrates remarkable self-reflection as he examines his own complicity in family dynamics that marginalized me while elevating him. I actually believed I was the successful one helping my struggling sister, he admits with painful honesty. When I offered you $50 at dinner, I felt generous and responsible. Learning that you'd been supporting my student loan payments for 3 years while I condescended to help you was a devastating wake-up call. Marcus's process of recognizing how completely our family's understanding of success and failure had been distorted provides hope for genuine relationship repair based on truth rather than fiction. His medical training gives him analytical tools for examining evidence objectively rather than defending emotionally comfortable narratives. I spent Tuesday night reviewing my student loan statements for the past 3 years. He continues, clearly having done extensive research to understand the scope of my anonymous assistance. The benefactor payments total over $36,000. Without that support, I would have defaulted on my loans and probably been forced to leave residency. The financial reality of Marcus's situation without my intervention sobering for both of us to contemplate. Medical residency programs have limited tolerance for trainees who can't maintain their educational debt obligations, and default would have ended his career before it truly began. I want to pay you back, he offers earnestly, but I also understand that might not be what you want or need. Maybe there's another way I can show appreciation for what you did. The offer comes from genuine gratitude rather than obligation or guilt, which makes it meaningful, even though repayment isn't necessary or expected. I don't need financial repayment, I reply honestly, but I would value a relationship where you see me accurately instead of through Dad's distorted narrative. Marcus immediately commits to visiting my photography studios and learning about my actual professional achievements, rather than Dad's dismissive characterizations. I want to understand what you've built while we all thought you were struggling, he says, with curiosity that feels authentic rather than performative. Tyler's response proves equally genuine when he calls Friday morning, though his emotional processing takes a different form than Marcus's analytical approach. I've been crying for 3 days, he admits without embarrassment, his voice thick with emotion and exhaustion. Tyler's personality has always been more emotionally expressive than Marcus's, and the revelation about my mortgage assistance has triggered profound guilt about his previous treatment of me. Sarah and I talked about inviting you for Christmas dinner last year, he reveals, but we decided you'd probably feel uncomfortable around our successful friends and neighbors. The casual cruelty of excluding me from family celebrations to avoid social embarrassment represents exactly the kind of thoughtless dismissal that Dad's lies made possible. Tyler and Sarah genuinely believed they were protecting me from awkward situations rather than rejecting me based on false assumptions about my circumstances. We bought our house with a mortgage we could barely afford because we assumed Dad would help during emergencies. Tyler continues describing financial decisions that depended on Dad's fictional generosity rather than realistic assessment of available resources. Without my anonymous mortgage assistance, Tyler would have faced foreclosure 8 months ago when his unemployment benefits couldn't cover their housing payments. The irony that his supposedly unsuccessful sister prevented his family's homelessness while he excluded her from social gatherings due to embarrassment about her perceived failures provides stark illustration of how completely Dad's manipulation had distorted our relationships. I want to make this right, Tyler says, with determination that carries more emotional weight than Marcus's analytical approach, not just between us, but with our extended family and friends who've been treating you badly based on Dad's lies. Tyler's offer to publicly correct misinformation about my circumstances with neighbors, friends, and professional contacts represents meaningful action toward repairing damage from years of dismissive treatment. His willingness to potentially embarrass himself by admitting his previous misconceptions shows genuine commitment to relationship repair. but Diana's response reveals troubling patterns that echo Dad's manipulative tendencies rather than genuine accountability or remorse. Her call comes Saturday afternoon with carefully calculated timing that suggests strategic planning rather than spontaneous emotional processing. Chelsea, I've been thinking about our family situation. She begins with the measured tone she uses for legal negotiations, and I believe we can find solutions that work for everyone involved. The framing of our family crisis as a problem requiring negotiated solutions rather than emotional healing and accountability immediately raises red flags about Diana's motivations and understanding of what's actually happened. Obviously, Dad handled things poorly. She continues with minimal acknowledgement of his systematic abuse, but public confrontation and family division won't solve anything. We need practical approaches that restore stability without destroying relationships. Diana's analysis treats Dad's years of psychological manipulation as a minor miscommunication, rather than serious emotional abuse that requires genuine accountability and behavioral change. Her lawyer training apparently leads her to seek compromise solutions rather than examining underlying justice issues. I've been thinking about a family trust arrangement. She proposes with obvious advanced planning, where your financial support could continue, but with formal legal structure that gives you appropriate recognition while maintaining family harmony. The suggestion reveals Diana's complete misunderstanding of why I stopped my anonymous support. She believes the issue is credit and recognition, rather than emotional abuse and systematic manipulation that made continued financial assistance emotionally toxic. I don't want to continue financial support under any legal arrangement, I explain firmly. The problem isn't lack of formal recognition, it's Dad's deliberate psychological abuse while accepting my charity. Diana's response exposes her true priorities with startling clarity. But without your assistance, my law practice will fail, she argues desperately. I've built client relationships and professional commitments based on financial stability your support provided. Withdrawing that assistance now will destroy everything I've worked to build. The admission that her professional success depends entirely on my anonymous charity while she's offered to help me financially demonstrates cognitive dissonance so complete it borders on delusional. Diana has convinced herself that accepting my support for her struggling practice while condescending to help my supposedly failing career represents logical family dynamics rather than complete reversal of actual circumstances. I'm prepared to formalize a repayment plan, she continues with calculated desperation, where I acknowledge the debt and commit to paying you back once my practice becomes sustainable. But her next statement reveals the manipulative thinking that makes repair impossible. Of course, if you force my practice to close by withdrawing support, I won't have any way to repay what I already owe you. The implicit threat disguised as practical consideration shows Diana has learned Dad's psychological manipulation techniques perfectly. She's suggesting that continued support is in my own financial interest while framing my boundary setting as destructive to both our interests. Diana, I reply with calm clarity, I'm not interested in any arrangement that continues financial support. My decision is final and not subject to negotiation or compromise. Her reaction to my firm boundary reveals the depth of entitlement that Dad's lies have created. You're willing to destroy your sister's career to prove a point about Dad's behavior, she asks with calculated emotional manipulation. I'm setting healthy boundaries with family members who've treated me badly while accepting my financial support, I correct her firmly. Your career consequences result from business decisions you made based on artificial security rather than realistic financial planning. The conversation ends with Diana making threats that echo Dad's manipulative tactics almost perfectly. Fine, she says with cold anger, but don't expect family relationships to survive this level of vindictiveness. You're punishing all of us for Dad's mistakes. The attempt to frame boundary setting as vindictiveness and collective punishment rather than individual accountability for personal choices shows how thoroughly Diana has internalized Dad's psychological manipulation techniques. Her response confirms that some family relationships may be irreparable regardless of my willingness to forgive and rebuild. But Marcus and Tyler's genuine remorse and commitment to relationship repair based on truth rather than fiction provides hope that authentic sibling connections can eventually develop. The family crisis has revealed which relationships were built on genuine love versus those maintained through financial convenience and manipulative control. The process of rebuilding will require time, patience, and consistent demonstration of changed behavior from family members who've benefited from Dad's lies while participating in my marginalization. But for the first time in years, some of my siblings are seeing me accurately rather than through Dad's distorted lens. The ripple effects of Sunday's family revelation extend far beyond our immediate relatives as news of the financial truth spreads through our small Connecticut community with surprising speed. By the following Thursday, the carefully constructed public image Dad has maintained for decades begins crumbling as business associates, neighbors, and community members learn about the massive disconnect between his perceived success and actual circumstances. The first sign of broader community impact comes when my phone rings Wednesday morning with a call from Patterson Photography, my biggest local competitor. Jim Patterson, who has benefited from clients Dad redirected away from me over the past 2 years, sounds uncomfortable and genuinely apologetic as he explains the purpose of his call. "Chelsea, I need to tell you something that I probably should have questioned earlier." He begins with obvious reluctance. "Your father has been contacting potential clients and steering them away from Richardson Photography by claiming you're unreliable and financially unstable." The admission confirms my suspicions about systematic sabotage, but hearing it from a competitor who benefited from Dad's lies adds new layers of professional embarrassment and lost revenue that extend far beyond family relationships. The Henderson wedding, the Morrison anniversary, the Whitfield corporate event. Your father contacted me directly about all of those bookings. Jim continues with growing discomfort. He said you were going through personal problems that affected your professional reliability and suggested Patterson Photography as a more stable alternative. The financial impact becomes staggering as Jim's lists contracts that should have come to me through normal referral channels. Each event represented between $8,000 and $15,000 in revenue, not counting the additional bookings that would have resulted from satisfied clients within those social circles. I should have questioned why a father would actively undermine his daughter's business, Jim admits with genuine regret. But James presented himself as protecting clients from disappointment, and I assumed he had legitimate concerns about your capabilities. Jim's call represents more than professional courtesy. He's also reporting that several clients who chose Patterson Photography based on Dad's recommendations are now requesting to switch to Richardson Photography after learning the truth about our family dynamics. The Hendersons specifically asked if you might be available for their daughter's wedding next spring, he reveals. They said they'd rather work with the photographer they originally wanted now that they understand the referral situation. But the community impact extends beyond photography business as news spreads through the interconnected social networks that define small-town Connecticut life. Dad's construction company begins facing questions from commercial clients who wonder about the stability and honesty of a contractor whose personal family relationships involve such systematic deception. Thursday afternoon brings a call from Robert Walsh, president of the Fairfield County Contractors Association, where Dad has served on the board of directors for 8 years. Robert's voice carries the diplomatic tone of someone delivering unwelcome news professionally. "James, we've received some concerning information about personal family matters that might affect your professional reputation." Robert begins carefully, clearly having practiced this conversation. The board needs to discuss whether these issues impact your continued service in leadership positions. The Contractor Association has apparently received multiple calls from members who attended the Golden Oak Country Club dinner or heard about it through community gossip networks. The revelation that Dad's financial stability depends on his daughter's anonymous charity while he publicly dismissed her creates credibility problems that extend into his professional relationships. Construction is a trust-based business, Robert continues with regret, and clients need confidence that their contractors operate with integrity in all aspects of their lives. The discrepancy between your public statements about family success and the actual financial arrangements raises questions about transparency and honesty. Dad's response to these professional challenges apparently involves continued attempts to minimize or reframe the situation rather than acknowledging wrongdoing and seeking to repair relationships. According to Robert, Dad argued that family financial arrangements shouldn't affect professional credibility and that the Contractor Association was overreaching by examining personal matters. Unfortunately, Robert concludes the board voted to suspend James from leadership positions pending resolution of these concerns. We're not terminating his membership, but we can't have board members whose personal conduct creates controversy for the organization. The suspension from Contractor Association leadership represents significant professional consequence that will affect Dad's business relationships throughout the region. Construction industry networks are relatively small and tightly connected, so news of his suspension will spread quickly among potential clients and business partners. Friday brings additional community fallout as the country club's membership committee initiates its own review of Dad's situation. Margaret Thompson, who chairs the membership committee, calls to inform me that several club members have raised questions about Dad's membership status given recent revelations about his financial circumstances. The club has policies regarding members whose financial obligations are met through undisclosed third-party support. Margaret explains diplomatically, we need to understand the true source of James's membership payments to ensure compliance with our financial transparency requirements. The country club investigation focuses not on the family drama itself, but on the deception involved in Dad's membership application and ongoing financial disclosures. When he applied for membership 3 years ago, he claimed independent financial resources to support the annual fees and social obligations, never mentioning that his daughter would be covering those costs anonymously. We're also concerned about complaints from other members regarding James's behavior toward family members during club events. Margaret continues with obvious discomfort. Several witnesses to Sunday's dinner have expressed concerns about his treatment of you, particularly given what we now understand about your actual financial relationship. The country club's investigation represents social consequence that Dad values almost as much as professional reputation. His membership at Golden Oak Country Club has been central to his identity and self-worth for years, providing access to social circles that validate his perception of himself as a successful businessman and community leader. The membership committee will meet next Tuesday to review the situation and determine appropriate next steps. Margaret concludes formally, James has been invited to attend and provide his perspective on the issues that have been raised. But perhaps most painful for Dad is the reaction from his church community, where he's served as a deacon and major financial contributor for over a decade. Pastor Michael calls Friday evening to discuss concerns raised by congregation members who attended the family dinner and witnessed Dad's behavior toward me. Several parishioners have approached me with questions about James's treatment of his daughter. Pastor Michael explains with pastoral gentleness. They're struggling to reconcile the generous, faithful man they know at church with someone who would publicly humiliate a family member while secretly accepting her financial support. The church community has been particularly receptive to my photography services over the years, and many congregation members know me professionally through wedding and family portrait work. Learning that Dad has been undermining my business reputation while I supported his church contributions creates cognitive dissonance that challenges their understanding of his character. I've suggested that James consider taking a temporary leave from his deacon responsibilities while he works through these family issues. Pastor Michael continues diplomatically. Leadership positions require modeling Christian behavior in all areas of life, including family relationships. The suggestion that Dad step down from church leadership represents spiritual consequence that strikes at the core of his identity as a righteous, generous Christian man who supports his community through service and financial contributions. His entire self-concept has been built on public recognition for generosity that he hasn't actually provided. As these community consequences accumulate throughout the week, a clear pattern emerges that extends far beyond immediate family relationships. Dad's systematic lies about our family dynamics have created professional, social, and spiritual credibility problems that will require years to repair if repair is even possible. The man who spent decades building a reputation as a successful, generous patriarch has been revealed as someone whose generosity existed only in his imagination, while his actual character involved manipulating and humiliating the daughter who made his lifestyle possible. Community accountability often proves more powerful than family consequences because it affects practical matters like business revenue, the social status, and professional opportunities. Dad is discovering that the price of psychological abuse involves more than damaged family relationships. It includes comprehensive destruction of the public image he valued more than his daughter's well-being. The truth has a way of spreading through interconnected social networks that can't be controlled or manipulated the way family dynamics could be. Dad's lies worked within our family because I enabled them through silence, but they collapse quickly when exposed to broader community scrutiny by people who have no emotional investment in maintaining comfortable fictions. 2 weeks after the community consequences began accumulating, I receive an unexpected phone call that changes the trajectory of our entire family crisis. Dr. Sarah Chen from Hartford Hospital's emergency department speaks with professional calm, but I can hear underlying concern in her voice as she explains why she's calling at 11:30 on a Thursday evening. Ms. Richardson, your father has been admitted following what appears to be a mild heart attack. She begins gently, clearly aware that family medical emergencies require sensitive handling regardless of underlying relationship dynamics. The news hits me with surprising emotional complexity. Despite everything Dad has done to manipulate and humiliate me, my immediate reaction involves genuine concern for his health and well-being, rather than satisfaction about consequences for his behavior. The psychological abuse hasn't eliminated my capacity for love and compassion, though it has certainly complicated those feelings. Is he in serious condition? I ask, already reaching for my car keys despite the late hour and recent hostility between us. The cardiac event was relatively minor, Dr. Chen reassures me, but we're keeping him overnight for observation and stress testing. The attack appears to have been triggered by emotional stress rather than underlying heart disease, though we're running additional tests to be thorough. The drive to Hartford Hospital takes 28 minutes through nearly empty streets, giving me time to process the emotional whiplash of transitioning from anger about Dad's abuse to concern about his mortality. The human capacity for holding contradictory feelings simultaneously becomes starkly apparent during crisis situations that strip away defensive emotional barriers. I find Dad in the cardiac unit looking smaller and more vulnerable than I've ever seen him. The hospital gown and monitoring equipment have stripped away the confident authority that once defined his presence in any room. His face shows genuine fear rather than the calculated manipulation that has characterized our recent interactions. "Chelsea?" he says quietly when I enter his room. his voice carrying surprise that I've come despite everything that's happened between us. You didn't need to come to the hospital. Yes, I did, I reply, simply settling into the bedside chair that suggests I'm planning to stay rather than make a brief appearance. You're my father, regardless of our recent problems. The statement establishes boundaries around compassion that acknowledge both love and legitimate anger without allowing either emotion to completely dominate my response to his medical crisis. I can provide support during his health emergency while maintaining accountability for his psychological abuse. Dad's eyes fill with tears that appear genuine rather than manipulative, though my recent experience has made me cautious about trusting emotional displays from someone who has proven capable of sophisticated deception. I've made terrible mistakes, he admits quietly, his voice breaking with emotion that seems real. Yes, you have. I agree without softening the acknowledgement with false comfort or premature forgiveness. We can talk about those mistakes after you recover from this medical situation. The next 3 days involve a complex dance of providing appropriate family support during Dad's hospitalization, while maintaining healthy boundaries around his psychological manipulation attempts. Even from a hospital bed, he occasionally tries to revert to old patterns of making me responsible for family problems or minimizing his own accountability for recent consequences. But the medical crisis also creates opportunities for honest conversation that wouldn't have been possible in other circumstances. When Dad asks directly about the impact of his behavior on my mental health, I explain how his systematic dismissal and sabotage affected my self-confidence and family relationships over many years. I started therapy 18 months ago because I couldn't understand why I felt like such a failure despite obvious professional success. I tell him during a quiet moment when monitoring equipment provides background soundtrack for difficult emotional honesty. Dad listens without defending himself or attempting to reframe my experience, which represents progress from his typical response patterns. I convince myself that treating you harshly would motivate you to achieve more, he admits with painful recognition of flawed logic. Instead, you motivated me to hide my achievements, to avoid conflict with someone whose approval I desperately wanted. I explain gently, helping him understand consequences he never considered during years of psychological manipulation. The conversation reveals that Dad's harsh treatment stemmed partly from his own insecurities about professional success and financial stability. When his construction business began struggling, he projected those fears onto me rather than addressing his own problems directly. I felt like a failure, he admits with vulnerability that suggests genuine self-reflection rather than strategic emotional manipulation. Making you feel like a failure made me feel more successful by comparison. The psychological dynamic he describes represents classic displacement and projection that explain but don't excuse his systematic emotional abuse. Understanding his motivations helps contextualize his behavior without absolving him of responsibility for its impact. Dr. Martinez visits the hospital Saturday afternoon at my request to facilitate a family therapy session that includes Dad, Mom, and me. Her professional guidance helps structure conversation that might otherwise deteriorate into familiar patterns of blame and defensive justification. Did James, your daughter's success threatened your identity as family patriarch, Dr. Martinez observes with clinical directness, so you created alternative reality where she was struggling while you provided for everyone. That psychological defense mechanism protected your ego but caused significant emotional harm to Chelsea. Dad's response to professionals' psychological analysis proves more receptive than his reaction to family confrontation. Dr. Martinez's expertise and neutral perspective apparently make her observations easier for him to accept than similar insights from family members he's manipulated for decades. I need to make genuine amends, Dad says during the therapy session using language that suggests understanding of concepts like accountability and behavioral change rather than simple apology and return to previous dynamics. Genuine amends require acknowledging specific harm taking, responsibility without excuses, and demonstrating changed behavior over time. Dr. Martinez explains providing framework for accountability that goes beyond superficial apology. Dad commits to individual therapy to address the psychological issues that led to his manipulation and abuse, though Dr. Martinez warns that meaningful change will require consistent effort over months or years rather than immediate transformation. Psychological patterns that developed over decades don't change quickly, she cautions both Dad and me. Recovery from emotional abuse involves rebuilding trust through sustained demonstration of different choices rather than dramatic gestures or promises. The hospital stay concludes with Dad's cardiologist recommending significant lifestyle changes to reduce stress and prevent future cardiac events. The physical manifestation of emotional stress provides motivation for psychological changes that might not have occurred otherwise. Your heart attack was a wake-up call, Dr. Patterson explains during discharge planning. The emotional stress you've been experiencing could trigger more serious cardiac events if underlying issues aren't addressed. As Dad prepares to leave the hospital, he makes commitments that represent genuine recognition of needed changes, rather than strategic promises designed to restore previous family dynamics. I'm going to start therapy next week, he tells me with quiet determination, and I'm going to spend time learning about your business instead of dismissing it. The transformation isn't complete or guaranteed, but it represents the beginning of accountability and genuine effort toward repair that our family relationships have needed for many years. Dad's heart attack forced confrontation with mortality and consequences that made continued psychological manipulation impossible to sustain. Whether these changes will prove lasting or superficial remains to be seen, but they create possibility for authentic relationship based on mutual respect rather than manipulation and control. 6 months after the devastating Father's Day dinner that shattered our family's comfortable illusions, I'm sitting in my newly expanded Boston photography studio reviewing the most successful year in my business history, while reflecting on the personal relationships that have been rebuilt from the ground up based on truth instead of manipulation. The studio expansion represents more than professional growth. It symbolizes the confidence that comes from operating authentically rather than hiding success to protect other people's feelings. The elegant space in Boston's Back Bay neighborhood showcases award-winning photographs and client testimonials that I no longer feel compelled to hide from family members who once dismissed my career as impractical. My assistant Sarah knocks on the office door to announce an unexpected but welcome visitor. "Chelsea, your father is here for your 2 o'clock appointment," she says, with the warmth that has developed since Dad began making genuine efforts toward accountability and repair. Dad enters my office looking healthier and more relaxed than he's appeared in years. The cardiac rehabilitation program, combined with consistent therapy and lifestyle changes, has transformed both his physical appearance and emotional demeanor in ways that suggest authentic change rather than surface-level adjustment. "These photographs are incredible," he says sincerely, while examining client portfolios displayed throughout the office. "I never really understood the artistic skill required for this work until I took time to study it properly." The acknowledgement represents one of many small but significant changes in Dad's behavior over the past 6 months. His therapy sessions have helped him recognize how his dismissive comments about my photography reflected his own insecurities, rather than accurate assessment of my professional abilities. "Dr. Martinez helped me understand that I was threatened by your success because it challenged my narrative about being the family provider." He continues with self-awareness that would have been impossible before his cardiac crisis forced genuine self-examination. Dad's individual therapy combined with periodic family sessions has created space for honest conversation about psychological dynamics that shaped our relationships for decades. The process has been difficult and sometimes painful, but it has also produced authentic insights that enable genuine repair rather than superficial reconciliation. I've spent the morning calling business associates to correct misinformation I spread about your professional reliability. He reports as part of his ongoing amends process. Robert Walsh says the Contractor Association has received positive feedback about Richardson photography from several members who've used your services. The systematic approach to repairing damage from his sabotage represents meaningful action rather than empty promises. Dad's willingness to potentially embarrass himself professionally by admitting his previous lies demonstrates genuine commitment to accountability that goes beyond self-interest. I also met with Pastor Michael to discuss my return to church leadership. He continues describing another area where consequences from his behavior are being addressed through patient repair work rather than demands for immediate restoration. The church community has been cautiously supportive of Dad's efforts toward change while maintaining appropriate boundaries around leadership responsibilities. His temporary leave from deacon duties will continue until he demonstrates consistent behavioral change over time, but congregation members appreciate his honest acknowledgement of mistakes rather than defensive justification. Mom joins our conversation after completing her own appointment with my business manager to discuss the photography services for her upcoming remarriage celebration. Her decision to divorce Dad and rebuild her life independently has paradoxically created space for healthier relationships with both of us. Your father and I are having dinner together next week. She announces with careful optimism that reflects realistic hope rather than naive expectation of immediate reconciliation. Not as romantic partners, but as people learning to be friends after 34 years of marriage that included too much manipulation and enabling. Mom's new apartment in downtown Hartford suits her personality in ways the suburban house never did. She's discovered interests and friendships that were submerged during years of managing Dad's controlling behavior, and her independence has allowed their interactions to become more genuine and less psychologically complex. I'm proud of you for setting boundaries that forced everyone in this family to confront uncomfortable truths. She tells me with maternal validation that carries extra weight because it comes after honest examination of family dynamics rather than automatic loyalty. Marcus calls during our meeting to provide updates on his final year of residency and his relationship with a fellow doctor he met through hospital networking events. His student loan situation has stabilized through income-driven repayment programs that make his debt manageable without my anonymous assistance, though the process required significant lifestyle adjustments. I wanted you to know that I'll be starting my attending position at Mass General next year, he says with excitement that includes genuine desire to share professional achievements with his sister rather than compete for family approval. The salary increase means I can finally start making real progress on my educational debt. Marcus's transformation from condescending offer of $50 assistance to respectful recognition of my business success illustrates how completely our sibling dynamics have been restructured, based on accurate understanding rather than Dad's manipulative narratives. Tyler and Sarah have successfully navigated his unemployment crisis through financial planning that acknowledges actual resources rather than depending on fictional family assistance. Tyler found new employment with a smaller engineering firm that offers lower salary but better work-life balance, and they've adjusted their lifestyle accordingly. We're thinking about inviting you and Mom for Thanksgiving dinner this year, Tyler suggests during a phone call that interrupts our meeting. Sarah wants to cook everything herself as a way of showing appreciation for family members who've supported us, honestly, rather than through secret charity. The invitation represents restored family relationships based on mutual respect rather than hidden financial dependence. Tyler and Sarah's willingness to host family gatherings reflects confidence in their ability to provide hospitality without artificial support and genuine desire for authentic connection. Diana's situation has proven more complex and less satisfactorily resolved. Her law practice did close when my rent assistance ended, but she's found employment with a larger firm that provides stable income without the pressure of building independent client base. Her personality still shows tendency toward manipulation that echoes Dad's previous behavior, though she's made efforts toward acknowledgement and repair. Diana sent a formal letter of apology last month. Dad reports with mixed satisfaction and concern about his daughter's ongoing emotional development. Dr. Martinez says some people require longer to change ingrained psychological patterns, especially when those patterns have provided perceived advantages. The extended family relationships have been rebuilt through patient conversation and consistent demonstration of changed behavior, rather than dramatic gestures or immediate reconciliation. Uncle Robert now refers photography clients to my business enthusiastically, often sharing the story of my professional success with pride, rather than the embarrassment he felt during the initial revelation. Grandma Rose, now 85, has become one of my strongest advocates within the family network. She regularly shows my business cards to friends at her senior community and takes obvious pleasure in bragging about her granddaughter's artistic achievements to anyone who'll listen. Rose called yesterday to say she's bringing 6 friends to your next studio open house. Dad mentions with amusement that reflects genuine pride rather than strategic approval seeking. She apparently told them you're the most successful photographer in Connecticut and they should see your work in person. As our conversation winds down, Dad presents me with a carefully wrapped package that contains something I never expected to receive from him. Inside the elegant box sits a beautifully framed enlargement of one of my award-winning wedding photographs mounted with museum-quality materials that emphasize its artistic value. "I wanted to display one of your photographs in my office," he explains with emotion that appears genuine rather than calculated. "Clients should know that my daughter is an accomplished artist whose work is recognized throughout New England." The gesture represents complete reversal from his previous dismissal of my artistic achievements. Instead of hiding or minimizing my success, he's chosen to celebrate it publicly in his professional environment, where business associates will see evidence of his daughter's accomplishments. Dr. Martinez says, pride in family members' achievements is healthy when it's based on authentic appreciation rather than reflected glory. He continues demonstrating application of therapeutic concepts to real-life situations. "I'm learning to be proud of you for who you are rather than using your success to enhance my own image." The psychological sophistication of his insight suggests genuine therapeutic progress, rather than surface-level compliance with counseling recommendations. Dad appears to be developing emotional intelligence that was lacking during his years of manipulative behavior. As I prepare to close our meeting, reflect on the journey from that devastating Father's Day dinner to this moment of cautious but genuine family healing. The relationships that have emerged from our family crisis are smaller in number, but dramatically higher in quality than what existed before truth replaced comfortable fiction. "I have one more thing to share," Dad says with nervous anticipation that suggests something important. "I've been working with my therapist on writing letters to extended family members, explaining my behavior and taking responsibility for the lies I spread about your circumstances." The letter-writing project represents accountability that extends beyond our immediate family to include everyone whose opinion of me was poisoned by his systematic misinformation campaign. The willingness to potentially embarrass himself professionally and socially demonstrates commitment to repair that prioritizes justice over self-protection. Some relationships may never recover completely. He acknowledges with realistic acceptance of consequences for his actions. but everyone deserves to understand what really happened and make their own decisions about forgiveness and future interactions. The mature recognition that some damage can't be undone shows growth that makes continued relationship possible. Dad no longer expects automatic forgiveness or immediate restoration of previous dynamics, but he's consistently demonstrating changed behavior that makes trust conceivable over time. As Dad prepares to leave the studio, I realize that this conversation represents exactly what I hoped might be possible 6 months ago when I placed those documents on the country club dinner table. Not immediate transformation or magical reconciliation, but genuine accountability and sustained effort toward becoming the father he should have been all along. Thank you for not giving up on our relationship, he says quietly, before leaving his words carrying weight of someone who understands how easily he could have lost his daughter permanently through his own choices. Thank you for doing the work to become someone worth having a relationship with. I reply honestly, acknowledging both his efforts and the ongoing nature of trust, rebuilding that continues to require patient demonstration rather than promises. The door closes behind Dad, leaving me alone in the successful business I built while being called a failure surrounded by evidence of artistic achievements that are finally being recognized by the family members whose approval once seemed impossible to earn. My phone buzzes with a text message from Kevin, the photographer from Boston, who Dad had discouraged from pursuing a relationship with me last year. We've been dating for 3 months since he contacted me after learning the truth about our family situation, and his genuine appreciation for both my professional success and personal resilience has helped heal wounds I didn't even realize needed attention. Dinner tonight to celebrate the studio expansion. He suggests referring to the Boston location that has exceeded all projections for first-year success and client satisfaction. The invitation represents something I couldn't have imagined 6 months ago, a romantic relationship with someone who sees me accurately, rather than through the distorted lens of family manipulation. Kevin appreciates my business acumen, respects my artistic vision, and supports my ongoing family healing process without trying to fix or control outcomes. As I review the day's appointments and prepare for evening plans with someone who loves me as I actually am, rather than who he thinks I should become, I'm struck by the profound difference between relationships built on truth and those maintained through deception. The family foundations that collapsed 6 months ago have been replaced by something smaller but infinitely stronger. Authentic connections based on mutual respect, honest communication, and genuine appreciation for each other's actual qualities, rather than comfortable fictions about who we think we should be. The journey from humiliation to healing has been difficult and sometimes painful, but it has led to relationships that can withstand truth because they're built on it. My business thrives in the open rather than hiding behind elaborate deception. My romantic relationship develops authentically rather than being sabotaged by family interference. My friendships deepen through honest sharing rather than careful management of image and reputation. Most importantly, I wake up each morning as myself, rather than as a character in someone else's story about family success and failure. The freedom to be authentic, even when that authenticity challenges other people's preferred narratives, has been worth every difficult conversation and painful boundary that made it possible. The woman who was called a loser in front of 30 family members has built a life of genuine success that doesn't require anyone's approval or recognition to remain valuable. But having that success finally acknowledged by family members who've done the work to see clearly makes the victory even sweeter than achieving it alone. The truth has indeed set us all free, even though the freedom came at the cost of comfortable lies that were easier to maintain than genuine relationships. In the end, the price of authenticity has proven far lower than the cost of deception, and the relationships that survive the earthquake of honesty are strong enough to withstand whatever challenges the future might bring. Have you ever had to choose between keeping family peace and standing up for your own truth? How did you find the strength to set boundaries with people you love when they couldn't see your worth? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Your experiences might help someone else who's struggling with similar family dynamics. If this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe for more stories about finding your voice in difficult relationships, and share it with someone who might need to hear that their success doesn't require anyone else's approval. Thank you for listening, and remember that you deserve relationships built on truth and respect rather than manipulation and control. Your authentic self is worth fighting for, even when the people closest to you can't see it yet.